Chapter 56. Turning around, June Xie walked out of the shop. It was not that the June family did not have a carriage. Moreover, the carriage was extremely luxurious. However, June Xie always preferred to walk on two legs. As an assassin in his previous life, he subconsciously believed that walking on the ground was the safest way. Whether it was by car or by boat, there would always be a sense of crisis where one's fate was not in one's own hands. June Xie was very concerned about this feeling. It made him very uncomfortable. June Xie's habit was to always be in control of his own destiny. The bodyguards that Grandpa June arranged for him had long been sent away by him with various reasons. This was because June Xie knew that the guards by his side were merely decorations at best. No matter where he went, there would always be someone following him in the dark. That person in the dark was a first-class expert. Although June Xie had never seen this person before, and with June Xie's current level of cultivation, he was unable to sense it. However, ever since Grandpa June arranged for this person to follow him, June Xie could clearly sense it. This feeling came from the instinctive touch of a top assassin. Although there was no reason, June Xie firmly believed that his judgment was not wrong. June Xie was now very interested in the person in the dark. Although his current martial arts was far from being as sharp as it was in his previous life, his spiritual touch had improved several times compared to his previous life. Moreover, he had tried many times to get rid of that person's tracking. Under such circumstances, this person was still able to follow him like a shadow. This was quite rare. June Xie appeared to be strolling around aimlessly. However, his mental state was firmly controlling everything around him. It could be said to be like quicksilver spilling all over the ground, pervasive and pervasive. Although June Xie's movement speed was not fast, only an expert tracker would be able to detect it. Every time he changed direction, every time he moved forward or backward, all of them were abrupt and unexpected. If it was an ordinary person, they would have been left in the dust long ago. However, the person behind June Xie was not left behind, not even once. In fact, the person following June Xie was already complaining in his heart. Grandpa June had asked him to protect his grandson without letting him find out about it. Thus, he agreed without hesitation. In his mind, he was merely protecting an idle debauchee. This task was not difficult at all. With his means, even if he were to follow him for a lifetime, this guy would only feel like he was dreaming and wouldn't know anything. Who knew that after following him for 2 days, this super tracking expert's head would be swollen. The kid in front did not act according to common sense at all. When you thought he was going east, he changed direction. When you turned around and chased him west, you found that he was already heading south. This person could be considered as one of the top tracking experts in this world. Within these 2 days, he had actually gone in the wrong direction several times. If not for the fact that June Xie's cultivation level was too low, he would have been able to shake this person off on the first day. After making a few mistakes, he was so depressed that he nearly went crazy. He even pulled out a few strands of his beard. There were several times when he wanted to jump out and grab this brat's collar to ask him, "What the F***CK are you doing wandering around in the middle of nowhere every day? Can't you be a little more honest? Could it be that this debauchee found me?" Just as he thought of this, he denied it. Looking at this debauchee, how could he find me? It's all because of this kid's actions. As he was thinking about it, he suddenly noticed that June Xie, who was in front of him, had quickened his pace and entered a cosmetics shop. He could not help but spit out in disgust. He thought to himself that this was truly a debauchee to actually barge into a shop owned by a woman. After waiting for a while, he did not see June Xie coming out. Finally, he could not hold it in any longer and rushed over. Sneaking a glance, he did not see June Xie's shadow. He could not help but feel depressed. It turns out that this kid went out through the back door. How could I be so stupid? Why did I not think of this? He searched in the direction of the back door like the wind. By the time he was far away, June Xie had finally ascertained that the aura that had been paying attention to him had completely disappeared. Only then did he leisurely walk out of the rouge and face powder shop. After politely thanking him, he walked back the way he came, swaggering off. Only a few female employees in the shop stared with their big round eyes. They were speechless, This handsome young master looked quite healthy. Why did he suddenly have diarrhea the moment he entered our shop? And why did he occupy the toilet for so long? We sisters almost couldn't hold it in anymore. The sky gradually darkened and the sun slowly set. It was already dusk. The curtain of night had already opened up its ferocious mouth. Once the afterglow on the horizon disappeared, it would swallow the entire Chinquan earth in one gulp. Junxia walked 2 steps and suddenly turned back. He changed to another path and went in the direction of the cosmetics shop's back door. At the same time, he could not help but laugh secretly in his heart. That guy is probably going to be confused by me today. As the king of assassins and a hunter of the jungle, this is what I am best at. If I can't deal with this idiot from another world, then it would be strange. Kid, compared to me, you're still too inexperienced. Junxia's guess was right. After that person chased for several tens of feet, he did not find any trace of Junxia. He instantly knew that he had been tricked and came back like a gust of wind. He searched in all directions and then stood in front of the cosmetics shop in a daze. He looked at the people coming and going on the street. His face turned green and red, as if he had opened a dye shop. He only felt weak all over. He had roamed the world for tens of years, and his tracking skills had never failed. But today he actually fell into the hands of a young kid. Moreover, it was such an ignorant and incompetent hedonistic prodigal. This was simply the biggest joke in the world. The feeling in his heart clearly told him. This time, he really lost him. How shameful. A big boat capsized in the gutter. Jun Tian, what kind of grandson did you raise? Why is it so strange? Jun Xie chuckled, feeling incomparably satisfied. Although he knew that the person had no ill intentions towards him, he was used to being alone. Having a person following him like a stalker always made him feel uncomfortable. He was just not in a good mood. Now that it had finally gotten rid of him, he immediately felt relaxed. Suddenly, the muscles of Jun Xie's walking body stiffened and then relaxed. With a shake of his shoulder muscles, the flying dagger appeared in his palm without anyone noticing. Several chilling auras rushed over from various directions. Their target was none other than the small street that Jun Xie was currently in. The auras of the same kind. Assassins. It can't be so coincidental, right? I just got rid of the people protecting me, and now I encounter an assassination? If I really die, then I will really become a joke. Dig in my own grave? Jun Xie smiled bitterly in his heart. However, he could not deny that a feeling of excitement that he had not felt for a long time rose within his heart. It carried a faint scent of blood. Finally, I can meet my peers in this world. I hope they will not disappoint me. Orderly footsteps could be heard in front of him as a group of people walked over. In the middle of the group was a sedan chair with a bright yellow surface. There were several strings of pearls hanging on both sides of the sedan chair. Below the pearls were small golden bells that gently swayed and emitted crisp sounds that were very pleasing to the ears. This was the imperial carriage of the imperial court's Princess Raimu. Could it be that these people are not after me? It's actually Princess Raimu? Jun Xie calculated in his heart, and suddenly felt that it was highly possible. He came here on a whim. If they wanted to assassinate him, there was a better place than here. He did not know how many times he had walked by just now. There was no reason for the assassin to follow him all the way here. However, who would have the guts to assassinate Princess Raimu in broad daylight on the official road close to the imperial city? Today I will talk nonsense. To be honest, I am too excited. At present, I am temporarily at the top of the rankings. Haha, brothers, please forgive me this time. Thank you, brothers. Thank you, sisters. It was you who took on the role of the evil prince. Feng Ling is sincerely grateful. I am proud to have such powerful brothers and sisters. You are the best. Thank you. Chapter 57. Princess Ling Ming was the emperor's most beloved pearl. If she wanted a star, she would not give him the moon. She treated him like a treasure. If Princess Ling Ming were to be assassinated, who knows how angry and heartbroken the emperor would be? How could these people withstand the emperor's wrath? Jun Xie didn't have time to think. Princess Raimu's carriage was already in front of him. When the two palace maids saw Jun Moxie standing in front of them, They couldn't help but look disgusted. They whispered something to the person in the carriage. The person in the carriage said something and suddenly stopped. The curtains of the palanquin were opened, and a beautiful girl dressed in a light yellow palace dress appeared. She looked a little impatient, but she still restrained her temper and asked, "June mo Xie, why are you blocking my way today?" "Blocking your way?" June Xie was stunned. He looked to his left and right and realized that he was standing in the middle of the road. It was impossible for such a big group to make a detour for him. Moreover, this was the princess's carriage. If that was the case, then he was really blocking her way. What the hell? June Xie only knew of the existence of Princess Raimu from June Moxie's memory. It was his first time seeing her in person. Now that he saw her, he couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. It was no wonder that June Mo Xie could not forget her. This Princess Ling Ming was truly a heavenly beauty, a beauty that could topple the world. Her skin was fair and tender, her eyebrows were curved, and her eyes were like two pools of limpid autumn water. She had an oval face, and her black hair was like a waterfall. She exuded a noble and holy aura, but at the same time, she seemed to be above the mortal world. She was fresh and refined, like a lotus flower that had just emerged from the water. "Where's Her Royal Highness going?" At this moment, June Xie realized that the majestic pavilion in front of him was the imperial city. Princess Raimu had just come out from the imperial city, but she was followed by a group of assassins? What did this mean? It seemed a little too strange. After figuring this out, June Xie had an urge to run away. With the June family's current situation, it was not suitable for them to get involved in the affairs of the imperial family. But looking at the strength of Princess Raimu and her entourage, June Xie felt that the possibility of protecting Princess Raimu's life was very small. Such a beauty would probably die in the hands of the assassins soon. Although June Xie felt that it was a pity, he didn't feel too reluctant. After all, the most important thing now was to protect himself and his family. "Oh, I want to go to the Duga residence to look for Xiao Yi. Third young master June, please let me pass." Princess Ling Ming's face was calm. It turned out that Duga Xiao Yi had been cheated out of a piece of meteoric iron by June Xie. The more she thought about it, the more aggrieved she became. She ran all the way to her best friend, Princess Ling Ming, to complain. But at that time, Princess Raimu was in the Empress's bedroom and did not see it. When Princess Ling Ming returned, she heard that her best sister had come and left in tears. She immediately became nervous, thinking that something big had happened. So, she hastily made arrangements to go to the Dugu family to see what had happened. She wanted to find out what had caused her unruly, adorable, and intelligent sister to be so heartbroken. But, as luck would have it, she met the culprit, June Mo Xie. Of course, Princess Raimu was not aware of this. Otherwise, she would have tied this guy up and sent him to the Dugu family. June Xie felt a little strange. From this princess, June Xie did not feel the slightest bit of a condescending and overbearing royal aura. Instead, he felt very peaceful. It was unusual for a princess of the royal family to have such a peaceful temperament. "Yes, in that case, Mo Xie will not disturb you any further. Your Highness, please go ahead." June Xie made up his mind to avoid trouble and left. But in the end, he still inadvertently reminded her. He stared at her and said in a deep voice, "Be careful." In fact, June Xie felt very strange. Normally, when a princess, especially one who was as pampered as Princess Raimu, was traveling, how could there be so few guards around her? Moreover, there were no experts in the entourage. And at this moment, when she was at her weakest, an assassin came? Could there be such a coincidence in this world? The more he thought about it, the more June Xie felt that there was a huge conspiracy hidden in this. A gentleman would not stand under a collapsing wall. An excellent assassin would stay away from trouble. June Xie was not a person who had tender feelings for the fairer sex, not to mention risking his life. Of course, he would resolutely refuse, especially when it was a woman who was full of disgust for him. Even if this woman was as beautiful as a fairy, so what? Princess Ling Ming looked at Jun Mo Xie in astonishment. Based on her understanding of this third young Master Jun, whenever he sees her, he will inevitably pester her with the words elder sister, younger sister. So, why is he being so easy to talk to today? This is truly a rare occurrence. However, he has retreated. Saving the two of them from falling out is a good thing. The princess shrunk back into the sedan chair, and the pearl curtain was lowered again. Looking at it now, a hazy and infinitely beautiful figure was faintly discernible, like a dream. In the shadows, someone was speaking hurriedly. Boss, that debauchee of the Jun family, Jun Moxie, has suddenly appeared here. What should we do? Should we wait for him to go over before we act? Or a masked man was leaning on the roof, his eyes flashing with a golden light. He came at the right time. We can't miss this opportunity. We might as well kill him together. Let that old brat Jun Zhan Tian go crazy together. That's good too. Yes. Jun Xie retreated to the side, muttering in his heart. Even a fragrant and stunning beauty will stink after death. Then she will still be a pile of bones, a pile of dirt. Jun Xie, you must not be soft-hearted. You will only implicate yourself if you stand up for him. Finally, he shook his head and was about to leave this place. Unexpectedly, at this moment, several cold auras locked onto Jun Xie. F***CK. I can't leave now even if I wanted to. Jun Xie could feel the murderous auras locking onto him becoming more and more intense. How could he not know that these people had also included him in their kill list? Who did I offend? This is really an undeserved calamity. Even if you eat, you can't eat like this. I'm just a passerby. Following the command of raise the sedan chair, the convoy continued to move forward slowly. The several bodyguards at the front of the procession were quite courteous, and they bowed to Jun Xie before urging their horses to lead the way. At this moment, Princess Raimu in the sedan chair was thinking about Jun Moxie's last words. Be careful on the way. This sentence was somewhat inappropriate. Suddenly, her heart trembled. Could it be that Jun Moxie knows something? Is he trying to subtly remind me? Thinking of this, Princess Raimu's heart trembled. She immediately ordered the carriage to stop so that she could interrogate him. At this moment, the clear sky suddenly darkened. The boundless night finally descended upon the earth. Following the descent of the night, several masked men in black descended from the sky like huge crows. Before they landed, dozens of black arrows were shot into the sedan chair. In midair, the light of swords and blades flickered with the light of gold and silver xian-qi as they pounced down. Continuous screams rang out. The dozens of guards accompanying the carriage had already fallen the moment the men in black appeared. A few of them reacted quickly and shouted in unison, "Protect the princess!" One by one, they stood around the sedan chair with their swords in hand. The sound of swords clashing rang out incessantly. The pedestrians on the street screamed and ran for their lives. Another two masked men in black descended from a roof and went straight for Jun Xie. Looking at the light of xian-qi on their bodies, they were two silver-level Xian practitioners. These two people were high-level Xian practitioners that the current Jun Xie could not handle. Furthermore, they were assassins. Recommend a book for girls, Golden Vase. It's very good. I'm also reading it. Brothers and sisters who are lacking in books can go read it. I believe it won't disappoint you. Chapter 58. Dispatching two silver-leveled Xian experts to deal with me. They really think highly of me. Jun Xie laughed bitterly in his heart. To dispatch such experts to deal with a debauchee, the mastermind behind this assassination was really generous. 2 gold-leveled experts, 7 silver-leveled experts, a total of 9 high-leveled Xian practitioners moving together, dealing with a convoy that was defenseless and did not have any experts accompanying them. It was as easy as striking an egg with a rock. 2 long swords flashed with silver light as they fiercely stabbed down. The 2 pairs of eyes behind the mask were filled with cruelty and bloodlust. 1 strike for 1 kill. Facing the 2 thrusting swords, Jun Xie's mind flashed with dozens of ways to deal with them. But on second thought, these were just a few methods, and no matter which one he chose, he would expose himself. The emperor was completely at ease with the current Jun family. Although the Jun family had declined, Jun Wui's lower body was paralyzed, and Jun Moxie's debauchee was useless. This meant that they had no descendants. This meant that the old Jun Tian had no ambitions. That was why the emperor handed over the entire country's army to him. But if he discovered that Jun Moxie was a dragon among men, then the trust he had now would immediately turn into a huge suspicion. After all, Jun Tian's position in the army was too frightening. And now, if Jun Xie were to expose his strength to the princess's bodyguards, from a certain point of view, it would be equivalent to forcing the emperor to act against the Jun family. So he couldn't. Jun Xie made a decision in a split second. Jun Xie's face was filled with panic as he hastily retreated. Suddenly, his feet seemed to have tripped over something, causing him to stumble backwards. Unintentionally or unintentionally, one of the swords brushed past his scalp. At the same time, he secretly circulated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to protect his internal organs. With a forceful twist, the other sword pierced into his chest. It looked serious, but not even his bones were injured. The art of unlocking heaven's fortune circulated at full force. A thick white mist instantly filled Jun Xie's limbs and every meridian, rapidly repairing his body. It was at this moment that the other person's legs flew out, landing 2 kicks on Jun Xie's chest. Jun Xie grunted and spat out a mouthful of blood, falling down with his back facing the sky. He rolled on the ground, causing his white robes to become stained with blood. Then, he turned his body upside down and fell silently. The 2 assassins looked at each other, their expressions unchanged. Without a word, they rushed towards the besieged Princess Raimu. In their minds, Jun Moxie, the capital's most famous debauchee, had been stabbed in the chest with a sword and then suffered a kick from a silver-leveled Xianqi practitioner. His internal organs must have been destroyed, and there was no hope for him to survive. Therefore, the 2 of them did not even bother to look at him and turn around. The 2 of them did not notice that when the 2 kicks landed on Jun Xie's body, the clothes in front of Jun Xie's chest suddenly bulged strangely. Following that, the 2 kicks landed on his chest, and his clothes actually fluttered 5 to 6 times, dissipating most of the force. At present, Princess Ling Meng's imperial bodyguards were the most ordinary of the palace guards. Only the 2 leading them were strong, but they were only silver-leveled Xian experts. Caught off guard, they had to deal with the surprise attack of 2 gold-leveled experts and 7 silver-leveled experts. Thus, they were thrown into confusion. Although the rest of them had the advantage in numbers, they were not of much use. The strange thing was, ever since the black arrow was shot into the carriage, there was no sound from inside. It was unknown whether Princess Raimu was dead or alive. The guards in front of the carriage fell one by one. The 2 black-clothed masked men looked at each other, and at the same time, they stood up and flew into the air. Their bodies shone with a golden light, like eagles swooping down on a rabbit, and pounced towards the carriage. The guards turned pale with fright. They shouted and rushed forward without a care for their own safety. They wanted to risk their lives to stop them. But how could they stop 2 gold-level experts with their low Xian Qi cultivation? The difference in strength between the 2 sides was too great. Like a wave, they retreated to the sides, and the 2 black-clothed men quickly pounced on the roof of the carriage. 4 hands struck out, sword light flashed, and a burst of golden light exploded. The luxurious carriage was already torn into pieces, and the beautiful cloth fluttered in the air. Under the night sky, the golden and silver light shone, and there was a kind of sorrowful beauty. A black light flashed, and the black arrow that was shot into the carriage suddenly shot out from the carriage like a poisonous dragon, biting towards the bodies of the 2 black-clothed men who were still in midair. Sword light flashed, and caw-caw sounds rang out as the arrows were cut down. At this moment, a graceful figure wrapped in a brilliant silver light suddenly flew out from the fluttering cloth in the sky. Princess Ling Meng's eyes were filled with resentment and unwillingness. She held a short sword in each hand, which shone with a cold light. Silver light shone brightly as she fiercely stabbed towards the two men in black. Princess Ling Ming's eyes were filled with hatred and unwillingness. This seemingly weak and slender princess was actually a silver-level xianqi cultivator. Unexpectedly, the princess was a martial arts genius at such a young age. In terms of personal cultivation, she might even be stronger than the other martial arts genius, Dugu Xiaoi. The two black-clothed men let out a muffled groan at the same time and drew their swords to block. Two pung-pung sounds were heard, and the three of them fell in three different directions. Princess Raimu's delicate body landed on the ground and swayed for a while. Her pretty face suddenly showed a captivating red and instantly turned pale. It was obvious that she had suffered internal injuries. Even though she was brimming with talent, she was still a beginner silver-level xianqi cultivator. Facing two gold-level xianqi cultivators at the same time, even if the other party's strength was like an arrow at the end of its flight, and Princess Raimu's sudden attack, she would still suffer from the recoil. There was a fundamental difference between the silver and gold level, and there was no way to compare them. The two black-clothed masked men retreated, and with a stomp of their feet, two small pits appeared on the ground with a loud boom. Their figures flashed across the space of 30 feet like lightning, and two long swords glowed with a golden radiance. Without the slightest bit of tenderness for the fairer sex, they stabbed fiercely towards Princess Raimu's delicate body. Princess Raimu had suffered serious internal injuries in that fight just now, and before she could adjust her breathing, she had no choice but to use all the strength in her body to dodge backwards. However, she was still unable to escape from the two men's deadly swords. As she forcefully raised her qi, the xianqi in her body became even more chaotic and was completely out of control. It was a mess, and the pain was as if a knife was being twisted, and she could not use any strength in her body at all. In a split second, she could not help but be disheartened. Am I going to die just like this? A trace of melancholy appeared on her pretty face, and she stood quietly on the spot, looking at the two long swords stabbing towards her body, and actually did not dodge anymore. She no longer had any strength to dodge. A silver-level xianqi cultivator against a gold-level xianqi cultivator, and there were two of them. Even if she was not injured, and even if she had superb dodging skills, it would all be in vain. The long swords were already very close, and Princess Raimu could clearly see the cruel and joyful look in the eyes of the two men behind their masks, as if they were extremely satisfied with the fact that they could kill such an outstanding beauty with their own hands. "Your Royal Highness!" Several guards cried out in alarm and rushed forward without a care for their own safety. But it was already too late. Is everything already too late? As long as we kill this beautiful woman in front of us, our mission will be complete, and there will be nothing left for us to do in the future. Naturally, we will enjoy endless glory and splendor. But now, all we have to do is to thrust our swords forward, and everything will be over. Even if she is the daughter of the Emperor of Tianxiang, even if she is a genius in martial arts, as long as she is not alive, everything will be over. Although the two black-robed men were well-trained assassins and were gold Xian experts, and were usually vicious and cruel, killing people like scything flax, but at this moment, the person they were killing was a princess, and their eyes could not help but reveal a look of wild joy. At this moment, almost everyone's eyes were focused on Princess Raimu, and no one noticed that at this moment, Jun Xie, who was already a dead man in everyone's hearts, suddenly moved slightly, and a cold light shot out from his fingertips. It flew up to half a zhang and made a half circle, before suddenly turning into a dazzling blue light that whizzed towards the space between the assassins and Princess Raimu. Recommend a book for female readers. Author, So Muddled Work, God's Vanquished Contract Master, book number 1514474 advertisement, making a ruckus, stirring up a storm of money from another world. Chapter 59. Seeing that the assassin was in a hurry, the lad had already thought of a way to escape. Although he fell backwards, he seemed to be in a sorry state, but all his internal energy was gathered in front of his chest. Under the agitation of his internal energy, his outer robe and undergarments bulged outwards, forming two very subtle layers of protection. The most amazing thing was that the big foot of the assassin seemed to have landed heavily on Junxie's chest, but when it touched the outer robe fluttered, dissipating most of the force. Then, the undergarments bulged again, dissipating another layer. Therefore, the actual force that Junxie's body received was less than a third of the strength. By the time the foot landed on his body, it was already an arrow at the end of its flight, with only a little force left. Even so, one sword and two kicks were not something that the current Junxie could easily endure. It was an extremely unbearable experience. However, while his internal organs were shaken, Junxie had already activated the mysterious creation art to transform the wounds he received into a clump of blood, which he spat out. Although the amount of blood he spat out was terrifying, it was not a big deal. That sword was wrapped by the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. With the miraculous power of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, it was only a flesh wound. Instead, it was the two kicks that made him feel very uncomfortable. If these people had waited for Junxie to leave before dealing with Princess Raimu, or if they had not directly attacked Junxie, then naturally, Junxie would have left as if nothing had happened. Princess Raimu was at most Junmoxi's dream lover, but not Junxie's. Therefore, this old man did not care at all. The so-called hero, saving the beauty, and having tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex all required strength. But this kind of strength was what Jun Dashao currently lacked the most. However, these assassins had also listed him as a must-kill target. This caused the evil monarch's rage to soar. Not to mention whether similar situations would happen again in the future. Just this time alone, Junxie would not let them go. Those who harm me, or those who attempt to harm me, always strike first. Since you want to kill me, very good. I can't kill you now, but I can first destroy your plan this time. Even if it meant harming others without benefiting himself, he had to do it at least once. Therefore, Junxie did not leave, even though he should have. Seeing that Princess Raimu was in danger, Junxie used all the meridians in his body to imitate Tian Xian's Qi Jin and concentrated it on the flying knife. Then he used the roundhouse technique and threw the flying knife out. The two assassin leaders were about to raise their swords to kill Princess Ling Ming when they suddenly felt something strange. A blue light flashed before their eyes, causing them to be unable to open their eyes. However, it was a dazzling sight to behold. Deep blue, a small flying dagger seemingly appeared out of thin air. It landed between the two men's swords and Princess Ling Ming's delicate body. This small flying dagger seemed to have brought down all the blue in the sky. The blue color made everyone who saw it feel a throbbing in their souls. This azure blue was so dazzling and beautiful in the dark gray night. This is a Tianxian expert. The two black-robed masked men cried out in a strange manner. Their eyes flashed with extreme horror, and they no longer cared about harming Princess Ling Ming. They hastily put away their swords and retreated in a sorry state. The way they looked at the flying dagger was as though they were looking at a deadly, poisonous snake. That was a strength that they could not resist. It was true that in the face of a silver Xian expert like Princess Ling Ming, the two of them could act as if they were adults dealing with a child. However, in the face of Sky Xian expert, even if a gold Xian expert was not an ant, he was at most a baby. I haven't heard of any Sky Xian experts in the entire Tianxiang kingdom. How could one suddenly appear at this critical juncture? Although the flying dagger was imbued with a refreshing blue color, it seemed to have no strength at all. It fell down softly and stuck between the two black-robed assassins and Princess Raimu. The thin body of the dagger was as light as a willow leaf, swaying gently. The blue light on the dagger did not dissipate for a long time. After a while, the dagger gradually returned to its original luster. Everyone felt as if they had been struck by lightning and stopped fighting. Dozens of pairs of eyes looked at the small, flying dagger on the ground, their eyes filled with shock. That small flying dagger had become an insurmountable moat. The flying dagger was filled with a mysterious blue color. Even after it was thrown out and stopped, the blue light was still condensed and did not dissipate. From this, it could be seen that the cultivation of this Tianxian expert had obviously reached the pinnacle of Tianxian. He was probably only half a step away from the higher realm of Master Xinxian. Moreover, this flying dagger did not make any sound when it was thrown out. Although it seemed to be powerless, the strength of the flying dagger was controlled perfectly. This also showed that this Tianxian expert's attack was only to intimidate and did not have any intention of harming anyone. But the more it was so, the calmer he appeared, as if he did not put the 9 assassins in his eyes at all. It was obvious that he had absolute confidence that if they attacked Princess Raimu again, he would kill all of them in an instant. For a Tianxian expert, killing these 9 people was as easy as flipping his hand, and it was not an exaggeration to say that it was not an exaggeration. Everyone present was an experienced and knowledgeable high-level Xian expert, who could not see the intention of the invisible expert. At the moment when the 2 assassins in black attacked Princess Ling Ming, a figure dressed in blue opened his eyes from behind a dark eave on the other side of the street. His entire body flashed with a blue radiance as he was about to reveal himself. However, upon seeing the appearance of the flying daggers, his body suddenly trembled. Just as he was about to fly out, he suddenly stopped, his eyes filled with shock. The eyes of this blue-clothed person, however, were a faint blue color. That was the sign of a profound sky realm initial stage expert. Although he also belonged to a peak expert that stood above all living beings, when compared to the profound sky realm expert that shot out the flying dagger, he was still more than a little inferior. Behind their masks, the eyes of the 9 assassins were filled with terror. They were in a dilemma. Although they were assassins, they also cherished their lives. If there was a chance to fight, they would try their best. However, when faced with a situation where there was absolutely no chance of success, anyone would choose to retreat. On the other hand, the guards of Princess Raimu were all overjoyed and relieved. With these legendary figures protecting Princess Raimu, the princess was as stable as Mount Tai and would not be in danger. If the princess was really assassinated, even if they were lucky enough to keep their lives in the hands of these assassins, they would not be able to escape the investigation of the imperial family. The moment Princess Ling Ming opened her eyes, she saw this scene. Looking at the small flying dagger on the ground, her eyes could not help but reveal a look of gratitude. If not for the miraculous appearance of this flying dagger, she would have been dead by now. Which senior is here? What instructions do you have for me? Please show yourself. The leader of the black-robed masked man straightened his body and cupped his hands towards the sky. His tone was respectful, but in reality, he was just playing dumb. He pretended not to understand the intentions of the person in the dark and tried to sound him out. After all, if this assassination was fruitless, they might not have a good ending when they returned. Holding on to the possibility of success, they still had to try. If it was confirmed that the Tianxian expert in the dark really wanted to protect Princess Raimu, they would not have any hope of completing their mission, even if they were to be buried here. At that time, the only option left was to retreat. However, even if Raimu was the princess of a country and the most beloved daughter of the Emperor of Tianxiang, she did not seem to be worthy of having a Tianxian expert as her bodyguard. Such a bodyguard was more than enough even for the Emperor of Tianxiang. The long street was silent, and there was not a single sound. The mysterious Tianxian expert was naturally disdainful of this puny gold-leveled Xian expert. I've been chopped 4 times in a row from the first time till now. It's made me dizzy and impotent. Fortunately, my little dick wasn't chopped off. I'm heaving a sigh of relief here. How lucky. Chapter 60. In the distance, the sound of hoofbeats was like muffled thunder. It seemed that the assassination attempt here had attracted their attention. After a long while, the leader of the black-clothed masked men's eyes turned cold. With a wave of his hand, he charged towards Princess Raimu with his sword. Since you're not speaking, then I'll try again. If you continue to attack, then we'll retreat immediately. If you don't attack, then Raimu will certainly die. Our mission can still be completed. But as he advanced, he was still very careful to avoid the flying dagger under his feet, not daring to touch it. Only God knows what kind of strange temper this expert has. Perhaps touching that flying dagger will bring about a fatal disaster. Suddenly, a blue light flashed in midair. Another flying dagger with a blue luster was inserted in front of the black-clothed man with a schwa sound. This time, the momentum was obviously much faster. It was obvious that the mysterious expert was somewhat angry at the Gold Xian assassin's indiscretion. The two flying daggers were inserted into the ground, trembling. They were small and exquisite, resembling a precious work of art that would shatter at the slightest touch. It seemed as though a gust of wind could blow them away. However, in the eyes of the 9 assassins, these two flying daggers had become a huge mountain between them and Princess Ling Ming. A huge mountain that was difficult to surmount. Attempting to surmount, it would only bring about one's own destruction. If they were to insist on killing Raimu, then they must first kill the person who had sent the flying daggers. But that person was an expert at the peak of Tianxian realm. Not to mention killing him. Even if the 9 assassins were to join forces to besiege him, they would still be killed cleanly by the other party. This time, the Tianxian expert who was hiding on a rooftop had already activated all of his spiritual senses. He devoutly closed his eyes, not letting go of any powerful divine sense in his surroundings. Under this kind of spiritual sense search, even if it was an expert at the peak of Tianxian realm or the initial stage of Supreme Master Xinxian realm, he was confident that he would be able to detect them in an instant. But after a round of spiritual sense search, this Tianxian expert opened his eyes wide in shock. Beads of sweat fell from his forehead, and the shock in his eyes had reached a terrifying level. Who is it that is helping Princess Ling Ming? This Tianxian expert thought to himself, but he no longer dared to probe the mysterious expert's aura, because he had exhausted all his efforts to search with rapt attention just now. But he actually couldn't find anything. There was no profound energy fluctuation in the air at all, and there was not even the slightest bit of divine sense fluctuation. The person who attacked had completely restrained himself. What did this mean? What kind of cultivation did he need? At least according to the knowledge of this Tianxian expert, not to mention himself, even those at the peak of Tianxian, or even those at the middle level of supreme martial artist Xinxian, might not be able to do it. Could it be that this mysterious expert was actually so brilliant? Could it be that he was actually a peak expert, like the supreme martial artist Xinxian? Wouldn't that make him invincible? That was a figure that belonged to myths and legends. Oh my God! Thinking of how he, a mere junior Tianxian expert, had rashly tried to probe such a powerful existence, this Tianxian expert couldn't help but sweat profusely. Although he couldn't detect the other party, this godlike existence must have found him. If the other party had released his divine sense just now and attacked his probing divine sense head-on, then it wouldn't have been difficult for him to crush all his thoughts. In that case, there was no doubt that he would have been an idiot now. Fear, how long had it been since he had felt this way? But at this moment, this Tianxian expert couldn't help but feel a heartfelt fear in his heart. His eyes were filled with gratitude, and he silently bowed to the sky with a respectful attitude, as if he had seen the last disciple of his ancestor. He knew that the other party must have sensed it and seen it. How could he know that the existence of the supreme martial artist Shun Xian expert, who had already risen to the level of the supreme martial artist, was now lying on the ground like a dead dog, not moving at all? As for the fact that he couldn't sense the powerful divine sense, this was also reasonable. This supreme martial artist Shun Xian expert, who was like a dead dog right now, had a Xianqi divine sense that was not even comparable to a silver-level Xianqi expert. It seemed to be really too insignificant. Although that Tianxian expert had sensed it, he had completely ignored it. It was really too weak. Of course, why did this supreme martial artist Shun Xian expert want to use Tianxian's cultivation to intimidate these killers? This was also something that could be easily explained. After reaching the level of supreme martial artist Shun Xian expert, the light of Xianxi would return to its original state, completely concealing itself without any color. If he used his true level to attack, these killers might not be able to recognize it, and wouldn't that be bad? At that time, he would definitely need to take action personally to kill those ants, and that would be too shameful of his identity. And the azure sea sky of Tianxian's peak was the highest cultivation that could be externally reflected by the light of Xianxi. Even ordinary people who had not practiced Xianxi could see it at a glance. From this, it could be seen that this senior was really careful and compassionate, and his intentions were really too good. That Tianxian expert sighed, and he sincerely admired him. No wonder he could reach such a high level. Just look at his cultivation, this temperament. It was incomparably stronger than him. Senior Master, if his thoughts were to be heard by the supreme martial artist Shun Xian expert, Jun Xie, who was lying on the ground, he believed that he would spit out a mouthful of blood and pass out from joy. This senior thinks too highly of me. At the street corner below, the eyes of the leading killer in black shot out a strong unwillingness. The expression in his eyes changed several times, and finally he raised his head and shouted, "Since Senior doesn't allow us to be presumptuous, then we will leave now." After waiting for a while, no one responded. Knowing that this Tianxian expert had no intention of showing up, and the sound of the horse's hooves was about to reach the street corner. Finally, he sighed, waved his hand, and said, "Retreat." The 9 men in black retreated at the same time, and in a flash, golden and silver light flashed. Just as they were about to fly away, they suddenly heard Lang say, "After killing so many people, you want to leave just like that? Isn't that too easy?" Along with this sentence, a figure in blue suddenly appeared at the street corner, blocking the way of the 9 men in black. This person's body flashed with blue light, and his eyes were like 2 light blue pearls. His body was thin and slender, and he stood in the night, but everyone who saw him couldn't help but feel a sense of loneliness in their hearts. Desolation, desolation, loneliness, desolation. On this person, all these negative emotions that made people feel endless sorrow. Even the slender long sword in his hand, seemed especially lonely. Princess Raimu's face was suddenly full of joy, and she shouted, "Uncle Yi, it's really you. Menger is so happy." The eyes of the 2 leading assassins in black suddenly changed, and their pupils contracted at the same time. Lang said, "Yi Gahan, the lonely star in the world? So it's you. Don't you use a sword? Or did you start to use flying knives to play tricks? No matter what I use, it's more than enough to kill you trash." Yi Gahan Lang looked at the 9 assassins in front of him, and then looked at Princess Raimu, and in the depths of his eyes showed a touch of rare warmth and love. Little Menger is not obedient again, and secretly left the palace. Did something big happen? Are you frightened? With Uncle Yi here, Menger is the safest. Princess Raimu smiled cutely. In front of the world's famous lonely star in the world, Yi Gahan, Princess Raimu didn't look like a royal princess at all. Instead, she looked like a little girl who saw her uncle, holding the corner of his clothes with incomparable dependence and admiration. Recommend a friend's book, The World of Rebirth, thanks to the Mountain and River chapter, Hihi, the teacher of one word. Milk has been changed sweat. Chapter 61. Yi Gahan was a solitary expert, a Tianxian master. Everyone knew that he never got close to anyone, was eccentric, cruel, and merciless. Once he took out his sword, no one would survive. But what people didn't know was that this eccentric swordsman used to be a handsome, elegant, and affectionate young man. No one knew that Yi Gahan and the current empress, Murong Xiao, used to be a pair of childhood sweethearts. But for some reason, Yi Gahan's family declined overnight and was removed from the capital. Yi Gahan also became a penniless nobody. The powerful Murong family naturally wouldn't let their daughter marry a poor person who was only a silver-level Xianxi practitioner. The Murong family's obstruction finally separated the pair of lovers. Yi Gahan left sadly, and Murong Xiao was devastated. She tried to kill herself several times, but was saved every time. Until the news of Yi Gohan's death came, Murong Xiao was completely disheartened. Under the persuasion of her parents, she finally obeyed the family's arrangement and entered the palace to marry the current emperor. A few years later, she became the empress of the country. Yi Gohan was gone for 10 years. His swordsmanship was successful, and his qi cultivation had also reached the Tianxian realm. He felt that he was enough to match Murong Xiao. When he returned excitedly, he didn't know that the world had changed and the beauty was gone. His former lover had become the empress, and Princess Raimu was already 7 years old. The two of them looked at each other with tears in their eyes. They both felt heartbroken. Once they entered the palace, it was as deep as the sea. From then on, Yilang was just a passerby. Heaven's will was unpredictable. Yesterday was now, and today was not. Fate played tricks on people. Yi Gohan was disheartened. His hair turned white overnight, and his temperament changed greatly. He became lonely, ruthless, and inhuman. However, towards his former lover's daughter, Princess Raimu, he treated her as his own and doted on her. Although he swore to never see Murong Xiao again, he often played with little Raimu. It was only when he was with Princess Raimu that Yi Gohan's ice-cold heart would melt. In fact, Yi Gohan had become the guardian of Princess Raimu. No matter who it was, even if the emperor wanted to punish Princess Raimu, Yi Gohan would dare to draw his sword. Princess Raimu was the only thing Yi Gohan could rely on in this world. She was also the cold-blooded and eccentric swordsman's biggest weakness. This matter was a secret of the royal family, and very few people knew about it. Therefore, the mastermind behind these assassins did not know. Otherwise, they would not have sent only 2 gold-leveled Xian Qi practitioners to assassinate her, and there might not even be this assassination. Even if they really wanted to assassinate her, they would need at least 2 Tianxian experts. Yi Gohan was now sure that the mysterious expert hiding in the dark would not make a move. However, he would not let these assassins leave, so he showed himself. Anyone who wanted to hurt Princess Raimu, no matter who they were, would be killed without mercy in Yi Gohan's eyes. He slowly turned around and drew his sword. The slender body of the sword shook like a snake, and the blue sword light rippled. The tip of the sword was slowly raised, pointing at the 9 assassins. Yi Gohan's face was cold. Die! The 9 assassins were speechless. Previously, we kept asking Senior if he had any other instructions, just to test you. However, you did not say anything, and when we were about to leave, you came out to stop us. Isn't it obvious that you're playing with us? Of course, they didn't know that everything was wrong because the targets were 2 different people. Yi Gohan, if you want to kill someone, you need to use your sword, not your mouth. The more the 2 assassins thought about it, the angrier they got. Even if your martial arts is much higher than ours, you shouldn't play with us like this. Knowing that they were doomed, they became more courageous and actually mocked him. Yi Gohan's expression did not change. He was still as cold as ice, and his gaze was as dense as an arrow. His body was as straight as a pine tree. His heart was ruthless, and the sword light became even colder. Suddenly, a light blue sword light exploded like fireworks, enveloping the surroundings and spreading out. He had actually agreed to the assassin's request to use his sword to kill. There was no need to waste his breath. Talking nonsense with someone who was about to die was undoubtedly a very stupid move. The sword light was splendid. It had a beautiful pale blue luster to it. The sword was brandished and gave off a dreamlike feeling. However, this wonderful luster was mixed with a strong feeling of heartbreak. The awe-inspiring sword light was as desolate and bleak as Yi Gohan's face at this moment. Yi Gohan turned around, leaned forward, and swung his sword. The throat of the silver Xian assassin closest to him had an astonishingly fresh cut. Blood spurted out like a mist, merging with the pale blue sword shadows that filled the air. Red and blue contrasted with each other, creating a heart-wrenching beauty in this scene of slaughter. Once the sword strikes, where can one find a bosom friend? Lonely, the assassin's corpse slowly fell to the ground. Yi Gohan's lonely figure had already appeared between the other two assassins. These assassins, who had been insufferably awe-inspiring just a moment ago, were now like clay chickens and pottery dogs in front of him, unable to withstand a single blow. Just like how a silver-level expert could view a ninth-level expert as an ant, a Tianxian expert could also view a gold and silver-level expert as child's play. Two streaks of blood shot out one after the other. Yi Gohan's expression was cold, without the slightest change. Amidst the bloody light that filled the sky, he carried a dreamy blue color, like a ghost or a demon, like the wind or fog. For a gold and silver-level expert to face a Tianxian expert head-on, this was simply like striking a rock with an egg. There was not even the slightest bit of hope in this battle. Moreover, they were facing a cold-blooded madman like Yi Gohan, who is famous for his ruthlessness. The situation is tense. Scatter go. The leader of the assassins let out a shrill cry. The last bit of hope in his heart disappeared without a trace. He was the first to leap up and shoot into the distance like a sharp arrow. The remaining 5 assassins were like a bomb exploding as they scattered in all directions, every one of them escaping. There was no suspense in the outcome. The only thing left to ponder was whether or not any of these 9 assassins would be able to escape by a fluke. Yi Gohan let out a long howl, his voice carrying a strong sense of desolation and desolation. A dense murderous aura filled the air as the pale blue sword light expanded, resembling a huge sapphire flying through the air at lightning speed. As the pale blue sword light flickered, an assassin screamed as he fell to the ground. In the blink of an eye, the 4 silver-level assassins who were trying to escape had all been killed. Before their corpses had even landed on the ground, Yi Gohan had already stopped one of the gold-level assassins. These 2 assassin leaders were the 2 with the highest level of martial arts in the group. Moreover, one was fleeing to the south and the other to the north. Even with Yi Gohan's strength alone, he could only stop one of the 4 silver-level assassins. As for the other one, he was powerless to stop him. Jun Xie lay on the ground, his eyes opened a slit to watch the show. Seeing Yi Gohan's divine might, he could not help but be fascinated. With Yi Gohan's strength, even Jun Xie from his previous life would not be a match for him if they were to fight face to face. This caused Jun Xie to have a higher valuation of this world Xian Qi. Of course, this was under the premise that they were to fight face to face. Based on the assassin's methods, Jun Xie was confident that he had an infinite number of ways to kill Yi Gohan. But after all, fighting face-to-face was not Jun Xie's forte. Pale blue, he was probably only at the beginner level of Tianxian, yet he already had such power. What about the peak of Tianxian? What about the supreme Shenxian? Jun Xie's heart was filled with a strong sense of eagerness. Only fighting with the strong was the fastest way to improve oneself. Unfortunately, the current Jun Xie was far from having the strength to challenge the strong. If not for this guy would have jumped up and challenged Yi Gohan to a fight. Strength. Jun Xie's heart was boiling like a pot of boiling oil, filled with an incomparable thirst. At this moment, he discovered that the escaping leader of the assassins was coincidentally flying towards him in a sorry state. Jun Xie's heart was filled with killing intent. Mother asterisk her, you brought people to make me look like this, and you want to just walk away like that? How could there be such a good thing? With a flick of his wrist, a flying dagger appeared in his hand. Jun Xie hid his face under his body and laughed sinisterly. Go to hell, kid. Chapter 62. Seeing that Yi Gohan did not have the energy to chase after him, the leader of the killers heaved a huge sigh of relief. As he ran, he looked around. Looking down, he saw Jun Moxie lying on the ground with his face facing the sky. His eyes seemed to be slightly open. The leader of the killers was stunned. Could it be that this brat was not dead yet? Looking back, Yi Gohan had already forced his companion into a dead end. From the looks of it, Yi Gohan wanted to capture him alive and did not have the time to care about him. The leader of the killers had a change of heart and could not help but become bold. Even if he could not kill Princess Raimu, if Jun Moxie were to die, the capital would be in chaos, right? Suddenly, he stopped moving and was about to land another blow on this brat's body. Just as he was thinking about this, he suddenly saw the brat's eyes blinking at him. He stuck out his tongue and made a face, cursing in a low voice. F***ck your mother. His voice was extremely low, and the surrounding area was in chaos. The sound of the horse's hooves could be heard from afar, and the people closest to them were several zhang away. They couldn't hear anything, and no one would pay special attention to what was happening here. Everyone was focused on Yi Guhan's attack. Only the leader of the assassins was running away with all his strength, and he was relatively close, so he could hear everything clearly. He was so angry that his eyes turned blue. I can't do anything to a strong person like Tian Xian, but can I kill a brat like you? You dare to scold me. With a loud boom, the long sword stabbed out fiercely. He cursed in his heart. I'll kill you. At this moment, a blue color suddenly appeared in front of him, as if the blue sky and the sea had appeared in front of him. An azure flying knife, so mysterious and beautiful, appeared in front of him like a dream. Its target was his throat. Tian Xian. The assassin leader was startled, his limbs turning icy cold. Under extreme fright, in addition to the fact that he was originally charging downwards, he lost his breath and instantly fell down. Before he landed, that azure flying dagger had already pierced into his throat, 3 inches deep. The leader of the killers was still confused until his death. Why did the flying dagger appear here when Yi Guhan was clearly 300 feet away? What kind of logic was this? This question made the aggrieved gold rank assassin widen his eyes in bewilderment even at death's door. He looked like he was eager to learn. Jun Xie's previous injuries were not light, and his movements were a little inflexible. Although the sword wound had been wrapped up, there was still the kick of a silver Xian expert. He could only stare blankly as the gold rank assassin fell towards him with a face full of confusion. The worst thing was that even though this guy was dead, his long sword was still in his hand. King unrepentant even in death. Jun Xie cursed in his heart. He desperately moved his body and leaped forward, narrowly avoiding a vital point. Pung! The corpse of the assassin leader accurately fell on top of Jun Xie's small body. With a chi sound, the sword in his hand was still pierced into Jun Xie's thigh, where there was the most meat. If the sword had been slightly more to the left, Jun Xie would have gloriously become a professional in the Imperial Palace. Hiss! Jun Xie had already let out a whoosh sound from the collision, almost unable to breathe. Next, the long sword stabbed into his leg, causing him to hiss out in pain. The last word he uttered out was the young master Jun cursing out. Who would have thought that a dead person could actually wield a sword to injure others? This world is really too king strange. The sword had penetrated deep into Jun Xie's flesh and had pierced deep into the soil. Any movement would cause a bigger wound, and it might even cut his tendons. Under such circumstances, Jun Xie naturally could not move, and since the assassin leader was already dead, it was even more impossible for him to move. The two of them were stacked on top of each other, like a human pyramid. The assassin's hand was still holding onto the hilt of the sword, and the blade was still stuck in Jun Xie's body. Such a position was indescribably strange. King hell. Jun Xie wanted to cry, but had no tears. This is the second time I've been pressed down by a man since I came to this world. The first time, although that damn fatty was disgusting, he was still a living person. This time, he was pressed down by a dead man and could not move. A living man and a dead man. The two faces were stuck together, and the 4 eyes actually met. Only then did Jun Xie realize that this guy actually died with his eyes wide open. Out of curiosity, Jun Xie observed carefully. The more he looked, the stranger he felt. This guy's eyes were not filled with hatred, nor was it resentment. Instead, it seemed to be doubt and confusion. King hell. Can't you find the way to the Yellow Springs? Don't look at me like that. I don't know either. Jun Xie cursed angrily. If an ordinary person was pressed down by a dead man and stared at, even the most courageous person would be frightened out of his wits and tremble with fear. However, This freak Jun Xie actually dared to chat with a dead man. One could not help but say that he was powerful. With a clap, Yi Gohan knocked the sword out of the other assassin leader's hand. With a flash of light blue light, the sword was already on the assassin leader's neck. Who sent you? Speak. Yi Gohan was furious. If he did not uncover the mastermind behind the scenes, who knew if this kind of thing would happen again in the future? He could protect Raimu once or twice, but he might not be able to protect Raimu for the rest of his life. If there was a Tianxian expert in the next assassination, what would happen then? That assassin leader Ling Ling looked at Yi Gohan with despair in his eyes. Suddenly, he laughed out loud and said, Yi Gohan, do you think I will say it? Ha ha, what a joke. I never thought that the famous Lone Star in the horizon, the dignified Tianxian expert, would actually be so childish. As he spoke, black blood suddenly flowed out from the corner of his mouth. His breathing stopped, and he looked at Yi Gohan with a mocking look in his eyes. At the moment he was captured, he had actually bitten open the poison sac in his mouth, sealing the throat upon contact. What a poisonous poison! Yi Gohan stomped his feet and let out a long sigh. His eyes revealed a trace of admiration as he murmured, At least you are a man. I will make things difficult for your corpse. The assassins who came to attack this time were all dead, and the scene instantly became quiet. Although the volume of Yi Gohan's words seemed to be very low, it was clearly transmitted to Jun Xie's ears. At this moment, Jun Xie suddenly had an urge to laugh out loud. What a shameful statement. How could such an act be called a man? Then the good men in this world are really worthless. If he didn't commit suicide, would you let him go? Even if you let him go because he was a good man, would the assassin organization behind him let him go? Would the mastermind let him go? I've seen stupid people, but I've never seen such a stupid person. You are a Tianxian expert. Idiot Tianxian expert. Jun Xie couldn't help but feel contempt in his heart. This kind of person, if you want to capture him alive, then the first thing you should do is knock out all his teeth while he still has the ability to move. That was the bare minimum. As for sealing his acupoints, cutting off his breathing, and so on, I shouldn't be the one to explain it, right? Nuba, this is really too unprofessional. Jun Xie, the professional assassin, sighed. The scene was full of blood. Princess Raimu slightly frowned, as if she couldn't stand the strong smell of blood. She came forward and asked, Uncle Yi, when did you practice such a superb skill with throwing knives? Can you teach me when we get back? As soon as the throwing knives were mentioned, Yi Gohan suddenly came to his senses. He cupped his hands and bowed to the sky and said in a clear voice, Many thanks to the senior for saving me today. This he can't thank you enough. Raimu's knowledge and experience is shallow. If I have offended the senior in any way, then I ask the senior to be magnanimous and forgive me. If the senior has any orders, then just say a few words. This junior will go through water and tread on fire without hesitation to repay the senior's kindness. In his heart, Princess Raimu was like his own daughter. She had become his only hope in life. The mysterious expert who had saved Raimu had saved him. Therefore, he didn't mention who he had saved when he expressed his gratitude. No matter who it was, everyone would feel the same way. Chapter 63. Moreover, Raimu's strength was too weak to distinguish the profound realm above Tianxian. What she said just now had actually offended the mysterious master. Even if the mysterious master was open-minded and didn't care about it, it was still not a good thing. Once such a master got angry, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yi Gohan understood the importance of this matter, so he naturally wanted to remedy it for Raimu. Of course, with Yi Gohan's temper, if it wasn't for Raimu, he would never say these words even if he was grateful. The sky was silent, as if the mysterious supreme Shun Xin Peak Master had already left. Yi Gohan let out a long sigh. He had already expected this result. How could such an otherworldly master lower himself to accept the gratitude of a junior, a mere princess of a country? Uncle Yi? What are you talking about? Princess Raimu opened her eyes wide curiously. Meng'er, your unintentional words have greatly offended the person who saved you. The senior who saved you is really someone else. Moreover, this senior's cultivation is far above mine. No, we can't be compared at all. Yi Gohan looked solemn. That saber is already at the peak of the human world. It's not something I can do. Ah! Princess Ling Ming cried out in surprise, her slender, jade-like hands covering her small mouth. There is such a thing? Uncle is already a master of Tianxian Peak. Isn't that senior even more brilliant? It's absolutely true. Yi Guhan nodded in a serious manner. Princess Ling Ming composed herself and put on a solemn expression. She faced the sky and bowed deeply. Ling Ming thanked Senior for saving me. Earlier, I had insulted Senior with my words. I am even more grateful for Senior's magnanimity in forgiving this Ling Ming. I wonder if Senior would be willing to show yourself so that this Ling Ming can personally thank Senior for saving my life. Of course, the sky was still completely silent. There was no news at all. If it was a true Tianxian master or an even higher existence, why would he care about the gratitude of a mere princess? If it was a true supreme Shenxian master, even if the emperor of Tianxiang was here, he might not be willing to show himself. It wasn't that Princess Rima didn't understand this, but out of gratitude, regardless of whether that person was still alive or not, she still had to thank him. Since Uncle Yi said so, this matter was absolutely true and could not be doubted. It's a pity that I didn't get the chance to meet you. Yi Gahan heaved a sigh. His face regained its cold arrogance. He stood desolately on the side and said, Little Ming, our Uncle Yi will leave first. You should return to the palace as soon as possible. The imperial city's garrison is about to arrive. In the distance, the thunderous sound of horse hooves was getting closer and closer. Princess Rima looked at Yi Gahan expectantly and begged, Uncle Yi, when will you come to see Minger again? Silly Ming, Uncle Yi will always be by your side. Yi Gahan deeply sighed in his heart and softly said, I will come to see little Ming. An assassin escaped before, so there might be some trouble in the future. So, little Ming, I must be careful in the near future. Princess Raimu softly uttered an end sound. Her expression showed that she was very reluctant to part with him. The sound of horse hooves had already reached the end of the street. Yi Gahan's body rose up, and he rushed out. But he suddenly exclaimed in midair and changed his direction. He rushed over from Jun Xie's side. His sharp eyes swept around, and he saw the small throwing knife in the throat of the assassin who had fallen on Jun Xie's body. He couldn't help but feel grateful in his heart. It turns out that this senior has already taken care of this trouble for me. I'm really ashamed. He didn't stay any longer and lightly flew up to the eaves. With a flash of blue light, he suddenly disappeared. At the end of the street, a strong horse galloped in, and a young officer in blue rushed over with an anxious face. Seeing that Princess Raimu was standing there, he breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly saluted. Your Highness, are you all right? The concern in his words was obvious. Princess Raimu looked at him blankly. She slightly bent down and picked up the two throwing knives on the ground. She carefully looked at them. The throwing knives were as thin as cicadas' wings, small and exquisite, with a subtle arc and beautiful lines. Princess Raimu fell in love with them at first sight. Her jade-like face couldn't help but show a slight excitement. This is the magical weapon used by the master that even Uncle Yi is ashamed of his inferiority. What a lovely knife. This knife? The young man asked in a low voice. Princess, you still need to be careful of such a lethal weapon. If it wasn't for the master who released the throwing knives, I would have already died in the hands of the assassins. How could I wait until now for you to come and rescue me? Naturally, the existence of Yi Gahan couldn't be known by unrelated people. Princess Ling Ming gave him an indifferent look, a trace of weariness and a touch of sadness appearing on her pretty face. In the past, when she left the palace, she would at least have a jade-level master by her side, and that was personally arranged by her father, the emperor. Why was she sent out to do something this time? And a few elite gold-level masters in the guards were also transferred for some reason, and it was at such a time when she came out that she encountered the assassins. All of this, what does it mean? It goes without saying. Princess Raimu was extremely intelligent, and she already knew it, but she tried hard not to think about it. She really didn't want to think about it, and she also didn't dare to think about it, because the result would really make her heart ache. It was really painful. It was heart-wrenching. It's fine if you guys fight for the throne, but why do you also treat me as a tool of war? It's just a mere throne. Is it really that important? Could it be that in your eyes, I can only be a tool to frame others for your own benefit? Although we are not siblings, we are still the same father, and the blood is thicker than water. Why? Why? Could it be that there are no blood relatives in the royal family? Princess Ling Ming could feel the cold aura emanating from the two flying daggers as they made contact with her skin. However, Princess Ling Ming felt a great sense of warmth and security. This mysterious sky Xian expert had saved his life, and he had almost wasted that man's help. But he hadn't punished him in the slightest, even though he was a top-notch expert. Princess Ling Ming couldn't help but yearn for his open-mindedness. Although Yi Gahan knew that the strength of this mysterious person was far beyond Tian Xian's cultivation, Raimu still didn't know. She only saw the elegant light that was as blue as the sea and sky. Invisibly, he saved people's lives, came floating, and left floating. Before and after, there was no trace to be found, and he didn't care about other people's repayment. He didn't even care about the ignorance of the people who were saved. What a broad-mindedness. This was a true expert and refined scholar. The heartbroken Princess Raimu developed a strong dependence on this mysterious Tian Xian master at the most frustrating moment. In her heart, she suddenly felt that this mysterious person, like Uncle Yi, was also worthy of her trust. With the throwing knives in her arms, Princess Raimu suddenly felt full of courage. Yes, no matter who it was, with the protection of such a top master of Tian Xian level and the lonely star Yi Gahan, she could sleep at ease. When she came back to her senses, she found that the young man was still looking at her blankly. A trace of anger flashed on Princess Raimu's face. She angrily glared at him, feeling extremely vexed. This person was the eldest son of the Murong family in the city, Murong Qianjun. He was also the rising star of the Murong family, the mother of her mother. In terms of kinship, he could be considered as Princess Raimu's cousin. He was also a very famous young talent in the city. Ever since he met Princess Raimu, he was immediately infatuated with her. He begged his family to get him a position as the leader of the Imperial Guards, hoping that he would be able to enjoy the moonlight first. Thus, he began to crazily pursue Princess Raimu. Ever since Jun Moxie quietly withdrew in the past 2 months, Murong Qianjun was one of the 2 most promising suitors of Princess Raimu. As for the other one, it was the eldest grandson of the imperial tutor, Li Yuran. Last night, strong wind blew and cut the optical fiber. We can't get online in this area. We are now in an internet cafe in the city, so the update is late. Brothers and sisters, please don't take offense. Chapter 64. Anyone who looked at him would feel that this young Master Murong was extraordinary in both literature and martial arts. His appearance was elegant, his demeanor was elegant, and his martial arts were high. He was indeed an excellent match for a woman. However, Princess Ling Ming felt that this person was very hypocritical. In front of her, he would always put on a mask of deep affection. She had been living in the palace for a long time, yet she was unable to judge how much of this deep affection he had for her was real. How much of it was fake? What was this man's true face and true temperament? Princess Raimu felt that she really didn't have the slightest bit of confidence. As for the other suitor, Li Yuran, the first heir of the Li family, and also the #1 scholar of the Tianxiang Empire, Princess Raimu couldn't fathom him. Li Yuran's character was elegant, and he had a natural and unrestrained temperament. Countless young ladies in the capital were infatuated with him. However, he had walked among thousands of flowers, and not a single leaf had landed on his body. He had the reputation of being the most refined gentleman in the Tianxiang Empire. Li Yuran was always cultured and refined. He was neither hurried nor slow, neither hurried nor slow. It was as if everything in the world was within his expectations and under his control. He was good at using money and power, and had an elegant demeanor. However, Princess Raimu always felt that there couldn't be such a perfect person in this world. If this person's external appearance was all a disguise, then wouldn't he be even more frightening? Wouldn't he be even more unfathomable? Because no one would be able to understand his true thoughts. When she was with Li Yuran, Princess Raimu often felt an inexplicable fear in her heart. She felt that this gentle young man in front of her was extremely dangerous. In contrast, the original Jun Moxie, although he had a slippery appearance and didn't conceal his intentions in the slightest, he was obviously a hooligan, and I'm not afraid that you can see through me. Although his character was indeed a bit unbearable, but he was also bad in the open. Even if he was a bad guy, he was open and aboveboard. At least there was no need to worry about him secretly playing dirty tricks. When he thought of Jun Moxie, he suddenly remembered that this hedonistic playboy was here just a moment ago. He seemed to have reminded him. Whether it was intentional or not, it was still out of kindness. However, the assassin seemed to have killed him as soon as he appeared. Thinking of this, he hastily said, "You guys quickly look for the third young Master Jun. See how he is." His heart could not help but feel anxious. Although he was lucky enough to be saved, Jun Moxie might have already been killed. If Grandpa Jun were to fly into a rage because of this, the consequences would be no better than if he were to be killed by an assassin. It seems that the capital is going to be troubled again. She hoped that her three brothers would not take advantage of the old Duke Jun's display of power and cause chaos in the world. Although she didn't see it clearly, in Princess Raimu's heart, Jun Moxie was most likely hopeless. After all, two of the assassins had come from his side, and at that time he had already fallen to the ground. If he wasn't dead, how could the assassins have let him go? Several Imperial bodyguards looked all over the place. After searching for a while, they found that Jun Moxie's body was buried under the assassin's corpse. There was no gap between the two bodies. A burly Imperial bodyguard ran over and reported, "Princess, we didn't find the third young Master Jun's corpse. We don't know if he stood up and ran away." Hearing his words, Princess Lingming's vision turned black, and she almost vomited blood. "What are you talking about? If we didn't find a corpse, could he have stood up and ran away? Can a corpse stand up and run away?" Murong Qianjuan's face sank. "What are you saying?" The Imperial bodyguard panicked and stammered. I mean, we really didn't find the third young Master Jun's corpse. He might have left? No. Enough. You don't have to say any more." Murong Qianjuan's face turned black. "If we didn't see the corpse, we can't say that he is dead. We can't say that it's a corpse. We should say that the third young Master Jun's corpse has disappeared. Do you understand?" The Imperial bodyguards nodded and cursed in their hearts. "Didn't you say that he was dead? You still have the face to lecture us. I despise you." Princess Raimu felt helpless and said, "Search around carefully. If you find the third young Master Jun's body, send it back to the Jun family as soon as possible." Influenced by them, Princess Raimu almost blurted out the word corpse. After searching around again, they still didn't find anything. Princess Raimu then arranged for an Imperial bodyguard to rush to the Jun family to report the news. That Imperial bodyguard had just mounted his horse and left when he saw a gray silhouette coming towards them. In the blink of an eye, he arrived before them. It was a skinny and withered old man. Murong Qianjun drew his sword. "Who are you?" His voice was stern. "I'm looking for someone." That old man's face was full of anxiety and depression. He was frantically searching everywhere. His face was full of anxiousness, and he turned a deaf ear to Murong Qianjun's question. Murong Qianjun was furious and shouted, "Arrest him!" The princess had just been attacked by an assassin. Now, such a strange person had appeared. This was very suspicious. The soldiers around him complied and were about to step forward. However, that old man shouted excitedly, "I found you! Ha! I'll let you run." "Damn it, you little bastard. You've been pierced by a sword, haven't you? Let's see if you can run again next time." Unexpectedly, he had a tone of schadenfreude. He was lying in front of the corpse of a black-clothed assassin and was drawing his sword. "So he's with the assassins. Arrest him." Murong Qianjun was overjoyed. He thought to himself, "There's still such an idiot in this world. His men are all dead, Yet he's still looking for corpses while surrounded by an army. One idiot. However, that old man threw out a long sword with a schwa sound. Then he picked up the black-clothed assassin's corpse and casually tossed it aside. It was as if he was throwing a sack. He bent down and picked up a blood-stained body. Princess Raimu hastily stopped Murong Qianjun. After looking carefully, she realized that the person was actually Jun Moxie. His head and face were covered in blood. He looked as if he could die at any moment. She immediately jumped in fright. However, when she saw that Jun Moxie's eyes were rolling around, she couldn't help but feel happy. So this guy is still alive. May I ask who this old man is? Princess Raimu asked. I don't have time to talk to a little girl like you. This old man needs to quickly treat his injuries. Otherwise, this brat will really die. The old man picked up Jun Moxie's body. With a shake of his head, he leaped in front of Murong Qianjun. He glared at him and scolded, "Little bastard. In the future, pay attention to what you say." Then, he withdrew his head and disappeared like a wisp of smoke. Murong Qianjun was about to explode in anger, but he had already lost sight of that old man. He couldn't help but seethe with anger. However, in front of Princess Raimu, he still had to maintain his composure. He could only grit his teeth so hard that they made cracking sounds. In his heart, he had already cursed that old man's 18 generations of ancestors. This is bad. Princess Raimu's complexion changed. I just sent someone to inform Senior Jun that Jun Moxie has been taken away. If Senior Jun Moxie were to fly into a rage, wouldn't that be bad? Murong Qianjun comforted her. Princess can be at ease and return to the palace. I will immediately arrange for someone to go to the Jun family and report that Jun Moxie, that scoundrel, the guy is still alive. Princess Raimu let out a long sigh of relief. That would be for the best. Turning her eyes, she discovered the flying dagger on the assassin leader's throat. She couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. So, this senior had already dealt with this trouble. It's laughable that I didn't know about it. Walking over, she bent down and pulled out the flying dagger. Sure enough, it was of the same style as the other two. She couldn't help but feel fascinated. Such an expert. I wonder when I'll be able to meet him and thank him in person. Princess Raimu turned her head and looked at the battered and exhausted convoy. She sighed. How am I supposed to go to the Dugu family in this state? Recalling the words that Uncle Yi had said to her, she opened her mouth and said, Let's return to the palace. Record the names of all the imperial guards who died in battle and report them to the inner palace. They will be compensated generously. Looking at the scene with pity, Princess Raimu closed her eyes and 2 drops of tears flowed down her cheeks. These people all died for me. Chapter 65. Since the carriage had been completely destroyed, Princess Ling Ming naturally could not be bothered to talk about it. She leapt onto a horse brought over by her bodyguard and slowly returned home. However, her mood was exceptionally heavy. Murong Qianjun hastily commanded the imperial guards to catch up with Princess Ling Ming, protecting her in the middle. Riding on his horse, he turned his head to look back and thought to himself, that Jun Moxie fellow looks like he is seriously injured. I wonder if he will die. If he's dead, that would be for the best. I want to beat him up whenever I see him. He's asking for a beating. He actually wants to woo Princess Raimu with that kind of conduct. He really doesn't know his own worth. He snorted as he looked at Princess Ling Ming's graceful figure from atop his horse. He could not help but be dazzled by her beauty. His mind was captivated by her, and his mind was in a state of limitless ecstasy. For a moment, he had completely forgotten to send someone to inform the Jun family. I say, old man, you've been following me like a ghost for 3 days. Don't tell me you've taken a fancy to me, because I'm handsome. Jun Xie was held in the bosom of the old man, as though he was a baby. This old man was like a dried-up chicken, his entire body seemingly devoid of flesh. Jun Xie felt an indescribable discomfort throughout his body, as though he was lying on a cobblestone. Knowing that this old man would definitely not harm him, there was no need for him to be courteous and ridiculed him. Do you think I want to follow a prodigal like you? You've been running around all day. I don't know what kind of dirty tricks you've used to escape from my sight. What do you think? Is this retribution? If it wasn't for your grandfather spending a lot of money. Huh? How did you know I've been following you for 3 days? The old man's face was full of resentment. He felt that following this debauchee was degrading him. He was about to complain when he suddenly realized something was wrong. This was no small matter. How did this useless brat know that I've been following him for 3 days? Could it be that my invisible tracking skills have deteriorated to this extent? In his shock, he immediately stopped in his tracks. He did not even mind Jun Xie's disrespectful way of addressing him as an old man. Idiot, why are you asking such a simple question? Of course, someone told me. Jun Xie thought for a moment and casually said, although this old man tracking method was not as good as Jun Xie's, but even in his previous life, it was still first-rate. Based on the original Jun Moxie's skills, even if he trained for another 100 or 80 years, he would not be able to detect it, not to mention escaping from this old man's sight. You're the idiot. Of course, an idiot like you wouldn't be able to sense me. HM? Who told you that? Did that person help you escape from my sight? The old man was shocked. With his tracking skills, he was actually being tracked by someone else, and he didn't even know. Moreover, that person had the ability to make a trash kid like Jun Moxie escape his tracking. This was too terrifying. What kind of strength did that require? If this person was an enemy, how would I know who that person is? Jun Xie continued to bluff. I've never seen him before. Oh, of course. How could a trash like you be able to meet such an expert? So, it was that man's idea to get rid of me? Did he give you the idea? The old man's first impression was the strongest, and he was even more certain that this debauchee definitely did not discover his ability. However, there was still a glimmer of hope in his heart. After all, he was extremely confident in his tracking and anti-tracking skills. He was bewildered. Could it be that the supreme Shun Xian had his eyes on me? No. Could it be? The more he thought about it, the more he panicked. In fact, this old man's methods were indeed impressive. Otherwise, with the abilities of the king of assassins, Jun Xie, how could he have spent 3 days dealing with him? Of course. I say, old man, are you done yet? Why are you always talking about these things? Where are you going to take me? Hurry up and send me home. Jun Xie felt a little uncomfortable. He cursed in his heart. Hurry up and send me home. I need to use the Hongjun Pagoda to heal my injuries. What if I get exposed somewhere else? T. You're injured to this extent. If I don't treat you now, you'll be dead before we get home. The old man was a little unhappy. With my skills, I was actually tracked. Motherf Ker. If I go straight back to the Jun family, your old man will complain and be depressed to death. If I don't take care of this kid, how can I go back at such a shameful time? As they were talking, the two of them arrived at a small house. The old man crouched down and carried Jun Xie into the house. He placed Jun Xie on the ground and began carefully inspecting the wounds on Jun Xie's body. After inspecting them from top to bottom, he could not help but click his tongue in wonder. On Jun Xie's chest, a sword had seemingly pierced through his chest. Additionally, there were also 2 distinct purplish-black bruises on his chest. It was obvious that 2 kicks had landed on his chest at the same time. Considering the skills of those silver-level assassins, any one of them would be enough to take his life. Yet, this kid had been stabbed in his vital areas and kicked twice, yet he was still alive and could even speak. This was not the most shocking part. What was truly outrageous was that not even one of his ribs was broken. The old man carefully used his Xian Qi to examine his meridians. There was no damage to his internal organs. His eyes could not help but widen. Wasn't this stab a little too coincidental? It actually stabbed into the crevice. This kid's luck was a little too good. Brat, you didn't hire that bunch of killers, did you? Why do they take care of you so much? Looking at your injuries, I highly suspect that you two must have colluded. You want to play the hero and save the damsel in distress. The old man stroked his beard and squinted his eyes. His appearance was as wretched as one could imagine. Almost choking on the old man's sudden words, Jun Xie did not know whether to laugh or cry. Old man, you really dare to think too much. This young master almost lost his life. Is there such a thing as a hero saving the damsel in distress? What are you waiting for? Hurry up and help me with my thigh. Can't you see that it's still bleeding? Junxia was somewhat speechless. This old man is already so old. Why does he seem to have no sense of propriety when doing things? Is there anything wrong with this? Why did his grandfather hire such a person to follow him? Bah, bastard kid, do I need you to teach me how to do things? The old man blew his beard. Kid, you're lucky. You won't die. You won't be crippled either. As he said that, he patted his thigh in revenge. It's fine now. Junxia's thigh had just been stabbed by a sword. Although the bone was not injured, the muscle was pierced through. It was a real knife with 2 holes. Now that he was patted by the old man, he immediately felt 100 sorrows and pain. He gritted his teeth and took a few breaths. Beads of sweat had already seeped out of his forehead. He hissed and asked through his teeth, "Old man, do you have a granddaughter?" The old man immediately became vigilant. He glared at him. What do you want? But he forgot why this kid asked him to treat his thigh. The sword on his chest was much more important than his thigh. If you have a granddaughter, I will rape her first and then kill her. My heart will ache to death, you heartless old man. Junxia scolded in his heart. Can't you see that I'm seriously injured? And you're still patting my wound. Oh, what I mean is it's more attentive to let a woman do this kind of work. How can a man not lower his head when he's under the eaves? That won't do. The old man shook his head. You're a pervert. Who in the entire Tianxiang city doesn't know that? Junxia was completely speechless. Who said I'm a pervert? The pervert is obviously Jun Moxie, not me. By the time the old man finished treating Junxia's wounds, it was already late at night. Of the two, one was impatient. He wanted to use the Hongjun Pagoda to heal his wounds as quickly as possible, but he didn't have the opportunity to do so. So, he was extremely annoyed. The other one was thinking, who is the expert who discovered me and tracked me? These two heartless fellows didn't even think of sending a message to their families first. Murong Qianjun, who had solemnly promised Princess Lingmeng that he would report to the Jun family, immediately threw this small matter out of his mind. But what the two of them didn't expect was that Princess Raimu had already sent a letter to the Jun family before the old man arrived. She had informed them that Jun Moxie had gone missing or died. They didn't expect that because of this delay, Jun Zhantian's anger would soar to the 9th heaven, and he would almost massacre the entire capital. The Tang family's courtyard was also in a state of mutual hostility when the assassins attacked Princess Raimu's convoy at nightfall. Chapter 66. Old Master Tang's face was gloomy as he stood on the doorstep. His eyes flickered with a faint trace of desire. After much difficulty, Grandfather Tang finally managed to find a clue that might or might not even be considered a clue. Grandfather Tang could not wait any longer. Making a move during the day would cause too much of a commotion, but Grandfather Tang did not intend to wait any longer. Night had just fallen, and all the experts of the Tang family had already gathered. 246 people, 2 mid-level Earth Xian level experts, 4 Jade-leveled Xian level experts, 12 Gold-leveled Xian level experts, 36 Silver-leveled Xian level experts. The rest were all experts at the peak of 9th level Xian Qi. For this operation, Old Master Tang Wanli had gathered all the experts of the Tang family inside and outside the capital. In less than an afternoon, this was the strongest force that Old Master Tang could muster. It was also the foundation of the Tang family. There was absolutely no room for failure in this operation. Today's operation, our target, is the Northern City Clan. Tang Wanli looked around with a gloomy expression. Attention, all members of the Northern City Clan. You must. Do not let a single one of them escape, especially the high-ranking members of the Northern City Clan. Do not kill, do not indulge, capture them alive. Do all of you understand? Understood. Everyone replied in unison. Although they did not know why they had to deal with the Northern City Clan, they also felt that using such a large force to deal with a mere Northern City Clan was making a mountain out of a molehill. However, seeing the gloomy expression on Tang Wanli's face, none of them dared to say a word. This operation will be personally commanded by this old man. If anyone of the Northern City Clan manages to escape, Then bring your head to me." Old Master Tang gave the harshest command. He slowly looked around and saw that everyone's expression had changed from the casual attitude they had when they first heard about the Northern City clan to a cautious one. Old Master Tang waved his hand. "Move out." 246 people dressed in black robes walked out of the door without a sound. Old Master Tang's black cloak fluttered in the night wind as he strode down the doorstep. Although he was old, he was still hale and hearty. It could be seen that the strength of each step represented the old man's indomitable determination for tonight's operation. "Wait, I'll go too." Following the voice, a big meatball wrapped in black cloth rushed out of the inner courtyard. Tang Yuan's figure was not suitable for night travel, so he did not have any clothes for night travel. However, he still wanted to join in the fun. Unfortunately, his figure was a little too that. In the end, he simply wrapped himself in a black cloth and rushed out just like that. Get lost in the darkness of the night in a large house. This was the headquarters of the Northern City clan. Old Master Tang's white beard fluttered in the wind as he calmly arranged his men. More than 100 high-level cultivators surrounded the mansion so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Everyone held their breaths, not daring to make even the slightest sound. They quietly waited for Old Master Tang's command. As for the other 100-plus cultivators, Old Master Tang had already divided them into 4 groups. They were to charge towards the 4 halls of the Northern City clan, the gambling dens, and other places that belonged to the Northern City clan, and even the homes of the Northern City clan's leaders. Old Master Tang's intention was to simply take action. They would attack from outside to inside, leaving no one alive. They would capture them all in one fell swoop. Only at the last moment would they deal with the headquarters of the Northern City clan. At present, there were more than 100 high-level cultivators surrounding the mansion. The people inside were like turtles in a jar. There was absolutely no hope of escape. Capture whoever comes out. In addition, they could use this method of killing with a blunt knife to probe the attitude of the Northern City clan. If the Northern City clan remained unmoved and allowed themselves to be dealt with, then it would mean that the Northern City clan had nothing to do with the Tang residence robbery. Even if they were related, it would only be a trivial matter. However, if they were to put up a desperate struggle, then Old Master Tang would believe that he had caught a big fish. Even now, Old Master Tang was still skeptical about the information provided by Tang Yuan. In fact, he was very skeptical about it. The young debauchee Jun Moxie had discovered a clue, and the young debauchee Tang had returned to report it. No matter how you look at it, the credibility of this information was too low. Who would believe it? AI, this old man was muddle-headed and desperate to find a doctor. Let's just consider it as getting rid of the scourge for the people. However, if I were to find out that this matter was actually a plot by these 2 debauches to take revenge, even if Jun Zhan Tian were to stop me, this old man would still capture Jun Moxie and Tang Yuan and give them a good beating. I will beat Jun Moxie into a fatty man and beat Tang Yuan into a skinny man. Let's swap their bodies. Humph. Old Master Tang's face turned gloomy as he secretly gritted his teeth. Looking at the gradually increasing number of bundled-up captives, Old Master Tang sighed inwardly. He had already made up his mind to go back and teach these 2 debauches a lesson. These 2 fellows had too much courage. It had been half an hour since they had surrounded this big mansion. They had captured every single person who came out of the mansion, sealed their internal energy, bound their hands and feet, gagged their mouths, and piled them up here. The number of people there was already quite a lot. Logically speaking, there should have been some sort of reaction from the inside. However, up until now, there had not been the slightest bit of movement from the inside. All of them were so obedient. It seems that the Northern City clan could not possibly be the ones who stole the Xiandan. True, what kind of joke is the Northern City clan? They dare to provoke the tiger's whiskers of my Tang family? In the distance, figures could be seen everywhere. The experts of the Tang family returned one by one. Each of them carried a few people in their hands, all of them tightly bound up. The mopping up of the Northern City clan's periphery had ended. Old Master Tang's heart was filled with disappointment. His face twitched, and he cursed in his heart. Tang Yuan. June Moxie. This old man will never forgive you two bastards. To think that you would gang up and use this old man as a spear. This old man Old Master Tang did not have the time to think about what to do. At that moment, countless black-colored human heads suddenly emerged from the walls of the Northern City Clan's mansion. Each of them had their bows knocked and a hail of arrows shot towards the experts of the Tang family, who were lying in ambush outside. At the same time, a shout came from within, and people rushed out from the front door, back door, side door, and the top of the wall. It was as though a bomb had gone off, and they were scattering in all directions. They actually dared to start a war without a declaration. They did not even have the attitude to negotiate with old Master Tang. Moreover, they were all scrambling to escape, all of them hating their parents for not giving them 2 more legs. What does this mean? Damn it! Such an intense reaction. How is this any different from a rebellion? Old Master Tang stared with wide eyes, his eyeballs seemingly about to pop out from their sockets. This sudden change in situation caused the old man to be unable to comprehend it. After a long time, he slapped his thigh fiercely. Pah! It was so painful that he sucked in a breath of cold air. However, his heart was filled with excitement. There's hope. Several muffled groans rang out. The experts of the Tang family were all experts with different levels of skill. Moreover, the situation was too abrupt. In an instant, several of them were hit by arrows and sustained serious injuries. As for the rest of the men, they charged towards the Northern City clan members. The sounds of swords clashing against each other rang out in rapid succession. In an instant, the two sides were locked in a fierce battle. Purple, black, silver, and gold flashed out at the same time. The entire area appeared incomparably dazzling. From the moment the Northern City clan members fired their arrows to the moment they charged out to fight, it was a long story. However, the time interval between them was very short. It was as though everything had happened at the same time. Chapter 67. Old Master Tang's eyes widened in surprise. His originally gloomy face suddenly turned into an inexplicable excitement. His hands trembled in excitement. His eyes shone with a look of relief. The old Marquis Tang, who had been calm for half his life, finally let out a string of expletives as his white beard trembled. F***CK. There is actually a connection. It might even be the main character. Mother ***. Who would have thought that this brat, Tang Yuan, would make such a great contribution? Who said that a blind cat could not find a dead mouse? This old man will definitely reward him well when I return. Thinking of this, old Master Tang's face suddenly turned awkward. He looked around like a thief. Tang Yuan's mother. I cannot scold him like that. That is my daughter-in-law. For Northern City Clan to react in such a manner, it must be related to the robbery of the Tang family. Otherwise, how could a mere Northern City Clan dare to attack the family of the Marquis of the Empire and the Minister of Revenue? A first-rate family in the entire Tianxiang Kingdom. This was simply eating a bear's heart and a leopard's gall, a cat licking the tiger's nose. This was a classic case of seeking death and extermination. Seeing the members of Northern City Clan coming out one after another, being thrown to the ground and tied up, old Master Tang coughed a few times and stood with his hands behind his back. His eyes were like an eagle's and his face was as calm as still water. His beard fluttered in the wind as he stood there motionless, a dignified air about him. Bang! One of the Northern City Clan members was sent flying. Before he could fall to the ground, a rope was wrapped around his waist. The rope quickly circled him a few times before he fell to the ground, turning him into a big dumpling. Pong! A punch landed on his face, causing his teeth to fall out. Before he could even scream out in pain, a smelly cloth was stuffed into his mouth. Next, he was tossed into the air, flying several zhang away. The whole process was as smooth as moving clouds and flowing water. Bang! When he landed, he found that he was surrounded by familiar faces. Bang! Another one. Bang! The 240-plus experts of the Tang family slowly advanced from outside to inside. Not a single drop of water could escape. Not a single drop of water could escape. The Northern City Clan's clan leader, Qin Hu, was being besieged by 3 gold-leveled Xianqi practitioners. No matter how hard he tried, he was unable to escape. His face was filled with despair. Not too far away, there was an Earth Xian expert with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at him indifferently. He couldn't charge out, he couldn't retreat, and he didn't even have the chance to commit suicide. If it weren't for the fact that the 3 of them wanted to capture Qin Hu alive, he would have long since stepped into the netherworld. Great Sect Master Qin was about to go crazy. The surroundings were gradually cleaned up. One by one, the experts of the Tang family gathered around. Some of them even rushed into the mansion with a swoosh and started a carpet search. They were almost as meticulous as tearing down a house. They did not miss a single spot. They even dug 3 feet into the ground to check the color of the soil in the places that might or might not have a secret passage. Not long after, there was a burst of jubilation. Found it! Old Master Tang's face lit up, and he walked forward. He saw a few experts of the Tang family carrying a person out. It was Qin Hu's son, Qin Xiaobao, and a few gorgeously dressed women. Qin Hu had hidden them in the most secret chamber of the clan. Originally, he wanted to rush out alone. Even if he couldn't survive, he hoped that he would be lucky enough to save his son. He didn't expect that the Tang family would be so good at raiding houses. The secret chamber was nearly 1 zhang underground, and the exit was very well hidden. Yet, they were still able to find it. Seeing his son being captured, Qin Hu was completely disheartened. He had completely lost the courage to resist. He was already in a difficult situation. If not for the fear that he would risk his life to fight, he would have been captured alive long ago. At this moment, he had completely lost his will to fight. His attacks were no longer methodical. The 3 gold-leveled experts moved forward at the same time. Pa! Pa! Qin Hu fell down like a lump of soft mud. His body's senses were still functioning normally. Only the control of his body, or the authority to control his life and death, no longer belonged to him. It was a complete victory. Old Master Tang slowly walked in front of Qin Hu. He lowered his head and looked at Qin Hu's dejected face. He waved his hand, and the people around him tactfully retreated to the side. They left a large, empty space in the middle. "Where's that thing?" Old Master Tang said in a low voice. His eyes were like sharp arrows as he looked at Qin Hu's eyes. He went straight to the point the moment he opened his mouth. He wouldn't give Qin Hu a chance to deny it. This sentence could easily give Qin Hu an illusion, which was, "I already know that you are the one who stole the Xiandan. I already have absolute evidence in my hands. It all depends on whether you want to cooperate or not." As long as Qin Hu was one of the people involved in this matter, when he suddenly heard this sentence, and when he was a prisoner, there was a 90% chance that he would break down. As expected, Qin Hu was tongue-tied. His eyes revealed complete despair. Old Master Tang, who was closely observing his every reaction, was overjoyed. His heart that had been hanging in suspense for a long time was finally at ease. As expected, it was the mastermind. Tang Yuan, oh, Tang Yuan. This grandson has finally done something proper. Moreover, it's a very serious matter. He's promising. Wait, this matter seems to have been reminded by that debauchee of the Jun family, Jun Moxie. Old Master Tang immediately sighed in his heart. It seems that having a group of debauches isn't necessarily a bad thing. At the very least, they're still useful at crucial times. Take this old man, for example. Didn't everyone call me a debauchee in the past? Isn't it still the same now? Cough, cough. Realizing that he was thinking too far, old Master Tang immediately came back to his senses. He had already decided in his heart that regardless of whether or not the Xiandan was found, the Tang family would at least owe Jun Moxie a huge favor this time. It seems that I have to get closer to the Jun family in the future. How would I know anything about the Xiandan? Tang, old master, I don't know why you suddenly treat us like this. Qin Hu answered in a flustered manner. His eyes flickered as he tried to deny it, hoping for a fluke. You brat, you really don't know how to talk big. Did this senior say that it was the Xiandan? It doesn't matter if you don't know. I will let you know soon enough. Old Master Tang smiled kindly. With a wave of his hand, An expert from the Tang residence carried the mud-like Qin Xiaobao over. Throwing him on the ground, he turned around and walked away. Qin Hu, I heard that this is your only son. No matter what happens to the Northern City clan, as long as you tell me what you know, I can guarantee that your son will be fine. I will also protect the last remaining descendant of the Qin family from harm. Old Master Tang wanly chuckled, his attitude extremely amiable. Of course, if you can't remember it no matter what, I believe you will soon see what will happen to your son. But in that case, it won't be very pleasant for everyone. You know what I mean, right? Father, save me. Qin Xiaobao cried out miserably. For this typical spoiled second generation, this year was simply a year of disaster for him. With great difficulty, he finally saw a beautiful woman on the streets. But before he could do anything, he had only said a few flirtatious words when he was captured and brought in, breaking his dantian and crippling his profound energy. With great difficulty, he had finally recovered and was able to move freely. But when he went to a restaurant, a ball of snot was thrown on his face. He had only cursed a few words when he was beaten up and even had his leg broken. He had just returned home, crying for his father and mother, and was currently recuperating when such a thing happened. With his broken leg, he was carried out and thrown on the ground. He was scared, flustered, and in pain. Old Master Tang slowly reached out with his hand. His dry palm gently patted Qin Xiaobao's neck, as if he was comforting a frightened puppy. However, no one would doubt that if Qin Hu's answer made Old Master Tang even the slightest bit dissatisfied, that dry palm would immediately turn into the token of the king of hell's soul-chasing token. Qin Hu sighed dejectedly, hung his head, and said, "You win." Old Master Tang smiled proudly. Qin Hu, as expected of a clan leader, you know how to judge the situation. Not bad. The sharp sarcasm entered Qin Hu's ears, causing his face to turn red. This extreme humiliation caused his face to turn incomparably ugly to behold. He stammered a few times before saying with much difficulty, I believe Old Marquis also understands that I was instructed to do so. Otherwise, even if I had the courage to do so, how would I dare to steal something from Tang Manor? Isn't that courting death? Even if I had the heart, I do not have the ability to do so. However, as the saying goes, a knife is placed on our necks. We have no other choice. Continue. Old Master Tang's eyes flashed. Chapter 68. Old Master Tang was a man of the ways of the world. He knew that Qin Hu's Northern City clan would not dare to behave atrociously in front of the Tai Sui clan. At this juncture, it was even more impossible for him to utter such a lie. If what he said was true, then there must be more to it. Seeing that Old Master Tang seemed to believe his words, Qin Hu could not help but feel hopeful. Even if he was unable to escape, at least his son would still have a chance to live. He quickly continued, I do not know the background of the person who ordered me to do this. I only know that this person has eyes and ears everywhere. Even the layout of the old Marquis's residence, the location of the hidden treasures, and even the timing of the attack were all planned by that person. I believe that he should be from the capital. As Qin Hu spoke up to this point, his eyes suddenly bulged out in anger. His eyes were filled with fear, and he shouted in panic, Old Marquis, save me. At this moment, a sharp whistle suddenly sounded in the sky. Yellow lights surged, and a huge pressure came crashing down from all directions. Without any warning, the entire sky seemed to suddenly have a few small suns, and a thick earthy yellow light filled the entire sky. Earth Xian experts. 3 vigorous figures descended with lightning speed, forming a triangular formation as they charged towards Old Master Tang. All of them were dressed in black, and their faces were covered, revealing only a pair of bright yellow eyes. The experts of the Tang family cried out in alarm. One by one, they rushed forward without a care for their own safety. Unfortunately, they were limited by their own strength, and were unable to stop the advance of the Earth Xian experts. Old Master Tang sneered and shouted, Scoundrels, you dare! His white beard fluttered in the wind, and his entire body emitted a thick yellow light. He brazenly rushed forward, shielding Qin Hu behind him. The other party's intentions were very clear. They were clearly here to silence him. However, Qin, who was old Master Tang's only lead to retrieve the Xindan. How could he let them succeed? No matter what, he must stop them. He must not let them harm Qin Hu's life. As long as Qin Hu was here, there would be a chance to find the mastermind. Find the mastermind and retrieve the Xindan. Only by retrieving the Xindan could the Tang family build a foundation that would last for 100 years. Old Master Tang's eyes turned red. Boom, boom, boom. Tang Wanli moved back and forth. With his own strength, he forcefully blocked 3 experts of the same level as him. His movements were bold and unrestrained, and he attacked without defending. He was like a mad tiger. It was naturally not a big problem for these people to kill a mere Qin Hu. However, if they were to kill old Master Tang here, then they would be going against the entire Tian Xiang Empire. This was not a consequence that just anyone could bear. Therefore, old Master Tang was fearless. In a short period of time, he had single-handedly held up 3 Earth Xian experts of the same level. The 4 of them formed a circle and started a fight. The entire place was filled with shadows of people, and dust was rising everywhere. The other 2 Earth Xian experts of the Tang family were afraid that their master would be killed. So, they quickly joined in the fight. These 6 experts were fighting in pairs, and no one below the Earth Xian level could get involved. Take Qin Hu away first, old Master Tang shouted. It was at this moment that a faint blue light flashed gracefully. A masked man in white suddenly appeared. He floated over like the floating clouds and flowing water. In the darkness of the night, his white robes were particularly conspicuous. His movements were confident, as though he was taking a stroll in the park. However, his speed was extremely fast. Along the way, the blue light flashed a few times, and 4 miserable screams rang out simultaneously. The heads of the 4 hall leaders of the Northern City clan burst open, and their corpses slowly fell to the ground. Tian Xian beginner level. Tian Xian expert. 200 experts of the Tang family swarmed forward and formed a heavy defensive line. However, that man completely ignored them. It was as though he was walking into an uninhabited land. His body floated up and flew 30 feet forward. A blue light flashed, and Qin Xiaobao, who was lying on the ground, could only let out a muffled groan. His chest and abdomen had already been smashed into pieces. Old Master Tang Wanli let out a roar and turned around to face the man in white. The man in white's eyes flashed with disdain. A blue light flashed, and a pair of palms collided with old Master Tang's. Old Master Tang let out a muffled groan, and his white beard trembled as he retreated a few steps. The man in white spun and floated away. Along the way, the experts of the Tang family were all blocked by his tyrannical Xian Shi. Without turning his head, he sent out a palm strike. Behind him was already Qin Hu. Qin Hu's eyes widened, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He screamed, "So ruthless! Old Marquis Tang, he is that." As he said that, he suddenly let out a miserable cry. His entire body fell to the ground. Not a single bone in his body was left intact. He. The man in white laughed softly and shouted, "Let's go." With a flash of blue light, he took the lead and rushed out. Several banging sounds could be heard as the people of the Tang family staggered backwards. In a flash, they had already reached the wall. With a flash of yellow and blue light, people leapt onto the high wall. The 3 Earth-level Xian Qi experts leapt off the wall and disappeared. The man in white remained standing on top of the wall, his white robes fluttering in the wind. He cupped his hands and said in an elegant voice, "Old Marquis Tang, I have no choice but to offend you today. The mountains are high and the rivers are long. We shall meet again in the future." With a long laugh, he leapt up, and with a flash of blue light, the sky returned to darkness. Grandfather Tang clutched his chest and let out a few muffled coughs. He could sense that this man in white was truly powerful. He had indeed gone easy on him. Otherwise, that palm strike alone would have left him with internal injuries. Even so, Grandfather Tang was so angry that his entire body was trembling. Looking at the wretched corpses of Chin Hu and his son from Northern City Clan, as well as the four Hall chiefs with their brains burst open, old Master Tang's hands and feet turned cold. Such a powerful Tian Xian expert should have appeared in his own family. He was truly unwilling to accept this. It was not easy for him to find such an important clue. Yet, just as he was about to succeed, he was silenced. The 200-plus people who represented the strongest members of the Tang family were gathered here. Yet, they could only watch helplessly. They even had to bear the humiliation of being merciful. How could they endure this? Seeing old Master Tang gasping for breath, everyone around him lowered their heads in shame. It was at that moment that a heavy, deep, and majestic sound rang out from afar, resounding through the heavens. It was like a tidal wave rolling in from the horizon. Yet, it was also like muffled thunder in the sky. The sound was slow yet endless. It carried with it an unparalleled aura that could sweep through the heavens and shatter the clouds as it slowly approached. As the sound rang out, the entire heaven and earth seemed to become filled with endless killing intent in an instant. Even the darkness of a night seemed to become exceptionally heavy. The sudden sound did not slow down because of the passage of time. Instead, it grew louder and louder. In the end, it rang out from all directions of Tianxiang City. Following the initial dull rhythm, it slowly caught up to the rhythm. Then, it converged into a huge torrent that resounded throughout the entire heaven and earth. This was the Thunder God's war drum. This was the prelude to a massacre. This earth-shattering sound of the drum was the spark for a large-scale war. The general's gathering drum. After 10 years of silence, the highest command of the Tianxiang Kingdom's military rang out again in the silence of the night without any warning. Once the general's gathering drum rang out, it would signify mountains of corpses and seas of blood, the slaughter of thousands of soldiers and thousands of soldiers, the death of countless lives. This also meant that there would be a group of brave warriors who would close their eyes for eternity. There would also be a small group of survivors who would tread on mountains of corpses and seas of blood to reach a higher position. In all directions, countless soldiers were startled awake from their sleep. Turning over, they quickly put on their clothes. Everyone's eyes shone with a crazed and bloodthirsty light. It's Marshal Jun's general's gathering drum. An Earth Xian expert from the Tang family cried out in shock. Everyone looked at each other in shock. Chapter 69. Today is the last day this book will be on the list of new books. There's no need to say unnecessary words. Brothers and sisters, please give me some face. Tang Wan Li's eyes widened in shock, his mouth agape. The sudden sound of the war drums made him forget all the shame and displeasure he felt earlier. His mind was filled with only one thought. Jun Zhan Tian has gone mad. This old man, why did he go mad? Why did he go mad when the Jun family is at its weakest? Everyone, return to the Tang family immediately. Those who hold a military position, quickly change your attire and report. The rest of you, without my orders, are not allowed to take a step out of the house. Old Master Tang made a prompt decision and issued a series of orders. Immediately, dozens of people bowed, turned around, and hurriedly ran away, their speed even exceeding the maximum speed they could muster. At this time, the beating of the general's assembly drum indicated that the situation had reached a very dangerous point. No one doubted that if any officer dared to be late tonight, their heads would roll. Jun Zhan Tian's military discipline was second to none in the entire Tianxiang Kingdom. Anyone who disobeyed his orders, regardless of whether they were nobles, aristocrats, or descendants of dragons, would all be killed without mercy. The sound of galloping horses could be heard from all directions, rushing like a tide towards the center of the city. Everyone wore bright armor, their faces anxious, the whips in their hands continuously lashed on the war horses they loved more than their lives. All of them galloped as if they were rushing 800 li at top speed. Marquis, what should we do with the rest of the trash? An expert from the Tang family pointed at the remaining members of the Northern City clan and asked. Bring them back and interrogate them one by one. Although old Master Tang knew that this would not be effective, he still held on to that last bit of hope. As the war horses galloped past in batches, all the barracks within and outside the city simultaneously sounded the loud sound of bugles. All troops were urgently assembled and maintained the highest state of combat readiness, awaiting the return of the commanding officer from the General Assembly platform. Then they would immediately move out. Grandpa Jun was going mad. This was not a lie. By the time Princess Lingmeng sent 2 men to the Jun residence, half an hour had already passed since the assassination attempt. Grandpa Jun was reading a book in his study, a smile on his old face, a look of satisfaction on his face. My grandson turned over a new leaf and turned over a new leaf. Looking at his vigor and perseverance, none of the nobles in the entire Tianxiang city could compare to my grandson. How could Grandpa Jun's heart not be filled with relief when he saw the Jun family at such a withering moment, when such a great hope and opportunity had appeared? Just as his mood was at its best, the housekeeper, old Peng, gently knocked on the door and walked in with a heavy expression on his face. He informed him that Princess Lingmeng had sent someone to report something to the old master. Jun Tian immediately summoned the guard. However, when he saw the guard's body covered in blood, Grandpa Jun's heart skipped a beat. The guard's stammering and evasive words made Grandpa Jun feel that something was amiss. His face turned uglier and uglier. Old Peng stood behind Jun Tian with a worried look on his face. This made Jun Tian feel something. After a series of interrogation, the bodyguard finally said, "The third young master Jun's body has disappeared." It was just this short sentence. When Jun Tian heard this, it was as if thousands of thunderbolts had simultaneously exploded in his head. His tall and sturdy body swayed a few times. Suddenly, his face turned deathly pale, and he fell backward without a sound. In an instant, he was no longer breathing. The old man was shocked. Fortunately, he had made preparations beforehand. He pinched Grandpa Jun's acupoint and pounded on his chest. Finally, Grandpa Jun regained consciousness. The bodyguard trembled as he knelt on the ground, not daring to move an inch. Everyone knew how important this debauchee, young Master Jun Moxie, was in Grandpa Jun's heart. If he did not respond appropriately, he would be met with a fatal disaster. The moment Grandpa Jun woke up, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His complexion instantly turned ashen and his eyes dimmed. However, the words that came out of his mouth were still clear and deep. What exactly happened? Slowly, without missing a single word, tell me everything. Although his voice was low, the heaviness in his words was like a towering mountain, pressing down heavily. The bodyguard's face had long since turned pale from fear as he slowly described what happened. Throughout the entire process, Grandpa Jun's face remained calm, and he did not utter a single word. Finally, when the bodyguard finished speaking, Jun Tian powerlessly waved his hand and said, "You may leave." The bodyguard felt as if he had just been granted amnesty. He trembled as he retreated, only to find that his entire body was soaked in sweat. In the study, Jun Tian closed his eyes and raised his head towards the sky. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down as a single tear flowed out from the corner of his wrinkled eyes. If Jun Moxie was still the debauchee Jun Moxie of the past, committing all sorts of outrages, Grandpa Jun would not have felt so bad. That was because he had long been disappointed. Turning this into despair was not a big deal. The Jun family's decline was already a foregone conclusion. Even if this day came early, it would not be a big deal. However, the problem was that Jun Tian had just witnessed the astonishing changes in his grandson. He had just seen the dawn of hope. He was filled with excitement and endless fantasies about the Jun family's future. However, this sudden news had instantly sent Grandpa Jun into an abyss of eternal damnation. With such a huge contrast, Grandpa Jun did not go crazy on the spot. It was already a testament to his self-control. Mo Xie died because he was trying to send a message to Princess Raimu. This was Grandpa Jun's first deduction. The assassin's target was Princess Raimu. Other than the 3 princes, The only ones who would have the guts to do so were the hostile forces of other countries. At present, the crown prince's position was still undecided. With the three princes vying for the throne, the other countries could not wait for them to fight each other. Therefore, at this time, the hostile countries would not do something so extreme. Therefore, the three princes were the most suspicious. This was the second deduction. Third, the princess was the main target of the assassin. However, Sia had died, but the princess did not. There was something fishy about this. Could it be that Sia's enemies, the Li family and the Meng family, had hired an assassin to do this? Was the assassination of the princess just a smokescreen? The third deduction. The messenger Sia had died, but the assassinated princess was unharmed. This meant that although Sia had sent a message to the princess did not send any bodyguards to protect him. All the military forces were focused on protecting the princess. As for Sia, he was killed so easily. This was the fourth deduction. The more Junjian Tian thought about it, the colder his face became. His eyes became sharper. In the end, his expression became even more ferocious. Why did my grandson, who sent a message out of goodwill, die just like that? But that damned woman did not die. I, Junjian Tian, joined the army when I was young and have fought thousands of battles in my life. A Grand Duke emerged from millions of corpses and made great contributions to the empire. No one in the entire empire could compare to him. I, Junjian Tian, have 3 sons and 3 grandsons. 2 of my sons sacrificed their lives for the empire. My youngest son was crippled for life. My 2 grandsons fought on the battlefield and died an unknown death. Now, my only flesh and blood has sacrificed his life to protect the princess of the imperial family. The Jun family, full of valiant warriors, has been cut off just like that. If that's the case, what's there for me to miss? It's all over anyway. Why don't I let all the enemies of the Jun family die with me? Junjian Tian laughed mournfully. The more he laughed, the louder his voice became. He laughed until his face was full of tears. Suddenly, he stood up. His eyes were bloodshot like lightning. Lingling looked at the night sky outside the window. Then, she turned around and slowly walked to the portrait of her deceased wife. She stood straight and stared at it for a long time. Her lips opened as if she wanted to say something. However, in the end, she did not say anything. She stretched out her palm and made a gesture in the air. It was as if she was feeling something, or as if she was saying her final farewell. Grandpa Jun narrowed his eyes slightly. It was as if he was holding back something. Then, he suddenly turned around and picked up the sword that had been dusty for many years. His tall and sturdy body strode out of the room. His white hair floated in the air, and he did not look back. The moment he turned around, 2 drops of tears fell onto the ground, shattering into sparkling pieces. The portrait on the wall was of a benevolent old woman. She still had the same eternal smile on her face. Her eyes seemed to have penetrated through the portrait and extended into the distance. The night wind blew in through the window, causing the portrait to flutter. It was as if the portrait was powerless to stay. Chapter 70. The housekeeper, Old Peng, stretched out his hand and pulled on a thread behind Junjian Tian's armchair. An ear-piercing bell rang throughout the Jun family's courtyard. Then he silently followed behind Junjian Tian, his face cold and resolute. He had already guessed what Junjian Tian was going to do next, but he would not stop him. Not only would he not stop him, he would also follow. No complaints, no regrets. Downstairs, a wheelchair quietly sat there. Jun Wui sat upright on it, his 2 sword-like eyebrows emitting a murderous aura. Seeing his father coming down, Jun Wui's face was expressionless. He met his father's eyes and turned their heads, not saying a word. At this time, there was no need to say anything. Dozens of dark figures rushed over from all directions and stood quietly in 3 rows in the courtyard. They looked at Junjian Tian calmly. No matter what Junjian Tian wanted to do, these people would follow him until the end of time. Amidst the layers of shadows, There were countless people gathered like ghosts, quietly waiting for orders. The June family's hidden forces were mobilized without reservation. Grandpa June stepped forward and spoke a few words in a low voice. Then, the hands hidden in the shadows suddenly receded like a receding tide, disappearing without a trace in an instant. It was as though the sky was filled with the stench of blood, and the howling of the wind in the middle of the sky had become even more intense after standing silently for a while. Jun Tian faced the fresh night wind and took a deep breath. He felt as if he had inhaled a thick stench of blood, choking his lungs. Turning over, Jun Tian mounted his horse. His blood-red cloak fluttered in the night wind, fusing with the color of blood. The rest of the people silently mounted their horses and followed him. Jun Wu-yi patted the armrests of his wheelchair, and his body soared into the air and steadily landed on the back of a horse. He shook the reins and followed the horse. The sound of hoofbeats gradually faded away and eventually disappeared. In a flash, the military headquarters was brightly lit. Jun Tian, dressed in his military uniform, sat upright in the main hall. Outside, 40 drums sounded at the same time. As the drums sounded, a continuous stream of people dressed in military uniforms, helmets, and armors galloped over. When they reached the platform, they dismounted from their horses and stood as straight as javelins. More and more people came, but none of them said a word. They only looked at Jun Tian, who was sitting high up in the commander's seat. Their eyes were filled with incomparable fanaticism. "Old Marshal, it's been a long time since I last beat the General Assembly drum. Those years when the flames of war raged through the skies. How nostalgic." The drum stopped. Below the stage, many generals stood solemnly. On both sides, dozens of large flags fluttered in the night wind, as if 1,000 people were crying at the same time. Jun Tian got up from his seat and walked to the stage. His sharp eyes swept across the crowd as he asked, "Is there anyone who hasn't arrived yet? We are all here. We await the old marshal's orders." Hundreds of people shouted in unison. "All right, let this old man do something earth-shattering tonight." Jun Tian's sharp eyes emitted an unconcealable killing intent. "Listen up, generals. Here, Shenzhounan. Here, I order you to lead your troops and guard the west gate. Without my order, no one is allowed to leave the city. If there is any disturbance, immediately send troops to suppress it." Jun Tian emphasized the word anyone. "Yes, Jun Yinfeng. Here, you are in charge of the east gate." "Yes, Zhan Tingtian. Here, north gate." "Yes, Chan Linyu. Here, south gate." "The rest of you, follow me." A series of orders were issued. Everyone stepped forward to receive the token and turned to leave. No one asked why. These were all Jun Tian's former subordinates. They were also the backbone of the Jun family's military. They had always followed Jun Tian's orders without any questions, even if it meant death. Especially Chen Zhounan, Zhan Tingtian, Chan Linyu, and Jun Yinfeng. They were Grandpa Jun's foremost capable generals. They were also unruly and iron-blooded war maniacs. They only obeyed Jun Tian's orders, regardless of whether they were right or wrong. They were also the backbone of the Jun family's military. One by one, the generals received their orders and left. Jun Tian's eyes grew colder and colder. "Emosia, your grandfather will avenge you. Anyone who has ever gone against you, anyone who is suspicious, will be buried with you tonight." Just as the war drum started, late at night, in the imperial palace, the emperor of Tianxiang Kingdom, Yang Huaiyu, jumped up in shock and shouted, "What is that sound?" This emperor, who was once in the prime of his life, felt an inexplicable sense of danger. It was as if something earth-shattering was happening. Outside the bedchamber, a feminine voice said, "Your Majesty, it seems like the sound of war drums." The sound of war drums? The emperor frowned and was suddenly shocked. War drums? The general's gathering drum. His expression changed. He got off the bed and draped a cloak over his body. Wearing only his undergarments, he quickly walked out and listened for a while. His expression gradually became solemn. Jun Tian. The emperor could immediately tell that it was Jun Tian's war drums. Apart from Jun Tian's general's gathering drum, there was no other sound in the capital that was as majestic and tragic as this. Only Jun Tian's war drums could display such power, enough to shake the entire Tianxiang city. What the hell happened today? This emperor does not know. The emperor's face darkened as he slowly asked. At this moment, anything could be done, but he could not be anxious. Only by knowing what had happened could he understand why Jun Tian would beat the general's gathering drum at this time. Only then could he adopt a targeted strategy to resolve the situation. This servant does not know. The 6 servants beside him knelt down at the same time, none of them able to answer. Investigate. Reporting to your majesty. This servant remembers that Princess Ling Ming had requested an audience with your majesty 2 hours ago. I do not know what the matter is. A middle-aged eunuch cautiously stepped forward from behind the emperor and replied in a feminine voice. Raimu? What happened to her? Raimu has always been well-behaved. If there was nothing important, she would not disturb me at this time. Why didn't she report it to me? Who dares to be so bold as to interfere in this matter? The emperor immediately realized that something was wrong. The eunuch stammered, unable to speak. His eyes kept drifting towards the bedroom. Quickly summoned Raimu. Yes, concubine Ming, come out. The emperor roared angrily, and a beautiful woman covered in fine muslin walked out and knelt on the ground. Let me ask you, why did Raimu come to see me? Why did you stop me? The emperor's eyes were as cold as ice, without the slightest bit of warmth. The princess, she said that she was assassinated, but this concubine saw that she was unharmed, and her mannerisms were the same as usual. I only knew that it was a child's mischief. Besides, your majesty had already fallen asleep at that time, so this concubine did not dare to disturb you. Concubine Meng replied, trembling with fear. My daughter was assassinated, and you still stopped her from seeing me, her father. You actually dared to cause trouble? Ha ha! You are truly my beloved concubine. The emperor's tone was gentle, as if he did not take it seriously at all. However, concubine Meng, who was kneeling on the ground, was already trembling. She knew that once the emperor spoke in such a tone, someone's head would definitely fall to the ground. The emperor gently moved closer to her ear and whispered, I think you don't have the guts to do it yourself. However, the matter that eldest brother promised you is definitely not going to be fulfilled. I will not let him do it either. Concubine Ming immediately widened her eyes in fear, and her whole body collapsed to the ground. Take concubine Ming away, banish her to the cold palace, and await punishment. No one is allowed to come into contact with her. The emperor was very calm, but he announced the fate of concubine Ming, who was once above tens of thousands of people. Father, Princess Raimu hurried over, her hair a little messy. Don't be anxious. What happened today? Come, tell Imperial Father everything. Tell me in detail. The emperor looked at his daughter and smiled benevolently, as if nothing had happened. The coldness in his eyes was subtly hidden. Chapter 71. Following Princess Raimu's narration, the emperor's face became more and more solemn, and his eyes became colder and colder. He lowered his head and did not make a sound, only listening quietly. This involved his daughter's life and death, and it also involved another key person. This person did not affect the overall situation, but because of him, the consequences were too great, so great that he, the emperor, might not be able to bear it, let alone be willing to bear it. An emperor, his own daughter was assassinated, and yet he was concerned about another standard debauchee. No kin in the royal family? It was really sad. Finally, according to Ming, before the assassination, Jun Moxie had reported to you? At least, it was a warning? The emperor pondered. Yes, although I'm not sure. Jun Moxie's motive should not be suspicious, or he might have found some clues. Princess Raimu's voice was low, but her tone was firm. Clues? With Jun Moxie's insignificant cultivation, How could he have found any clues? Forget it. These are all minor details. Later on, June Moxie was rescued by another expert, which means that June Moxie did not die, right? The Emperor's eyes deepened. Yes, father. Princess Raimu knew the Emperor's taboo, so she did not mention Yigahan's name, even though the Emperor himself knew about this matter. If that is the case, then why did Jun Tian go crazy? He actually beat the general's gathering drum without a care. The Emperor pondered. His grandson is not dead, and the Jun family is not at the point of no descendants. Then his actions this time are really puzzling. This is really... He stood up and slowly paced 2 steps, his fingers lightly tapping on his forehead, and said slowly, "My grandson is not dead, but Jun Tian went crazy for no reason. Perhaps one thing is certain, Jun Moxie is definitely not home at this moment. Jun Tian must have received the news that his grandson was in danger, and he did not see his grandson return for a long time, so he behaved strangely. Looks like I've underestimated them? How many birds do I need to kill with 1 stone?" His Majesty smiled coldly. Princess Raimu suddenly thought of something, and her face turned pale. If that was really the case, although it was just a misunderstanding, the consequences would be unmanageable. If Jun Moxie's life wasn't in danger at that time, why didn't he send someone to inform the Jun family? Meng-er, you handled this matter too carelessly. Meng-er, do you remember anything? Seeing the huge change in Princess Ling Meng's face, the Emperor smiled and tried his best to control his anger. However, the corners of his eyebrows showed signs of being unable to be suppressed. His daughter had always handled matters calmly. How could she have made such a blunder today? Could it be that she had lost her usual calmness because of the assassination attempt? Imperial Father, when we found Jun Moxie's corpse? No, when his body was missing, I sent someone to inform old Master Jun. The moment the messenger left, that old man came and carried the injured Jun Moxie away. Princess Raimu was at a loss, unable to speak. And then? The news had already been sent, but when you found out that Jun Moxie was not dead, did you not do anything to remedy the situation? His Majesty looked at his daughter in disappointment, but his heart skipped a beat. Old man, could it be that there was someone else besides that bastard Yi Gohan who was secretly protecting my daughter? If that's the case, His Majesty thought to himself, but his face remained expressionless. Such an important piece of news naturally had to be remedied. At that time, my imperial bodyguard were all seriously injured, so I had Murong Qianjun send someone to inform old Master Jun that Jun Moxie was not dead. If old Master Jun did not receive the news that Jun Moxie was not dead, then the only possibility is... There is no need for that possibility. It is obvious that Murong Qianjun did not go to deliver the news. Or perhaps, he only went to deliver the news of Jun Moxie's death. Otherwise, he would not. His Majesty sighed, and a sinister expression appeared on his handsome face, but it quickly disappeared. There is nothing else for you to do. Go and rest. As he said that, he stroked Raimu's hair, and his empty eyes looked at the hazy yellow color of the imperial palace. His Majesty suddenly felt that this yellow color, which represented nobility, was actually very glaring to the eyes and very vexing to the heart. This assassination attempt is a little strange. How unexpected. His Majesty pondered for a moment, and a sharp glint flashed across his eyes. Perhaps it is time to wash the imperial palace. I wonder if it will look a little brighter if I wash it with human blood? In the distance, the earth-shattering sound of the war drums had already died down, but the atmosphere was still filled with an oppressive atmosphere. I hope, Jun Tian, I hope you will not make things too difficult for me. His Majesty's eyes revealed a complicated expression, and it disappeared in a flash. Looking at his daughter's departing figure, His Majesty stood with his hands behind his back and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, he said, "Shadow, go out and take a look. Do not make a move unless it is necessary. Tell Jun Tian that his grandson is not dead. It is fine to cause a ruckus, but do not go overboard. Bring me something on the way. It is convenient." That old thing has been holding back for a few years." After saying that, His Majesty wrote a few words, rolled it up, and handed it over. "Go." A gust of wind rose, and a seemingly formless figure floated out. The next moment, the slip of paper in His Majesty's hand disappeared, and a faint shadow flew out of the imperial palace. "Although I am letting you be presumptuous this time, I also want to borrow a knife," His Majesty whispered to himself, and a trace of a meaningful smile suddenly flashed across his face. His Majesty had always taken every possibility into account, but this time he had far underestimated the extent of Jun Zhan Tian's rage. Moreover, it was already too late for him to send someone over now. "Men, summon Great General Dugawudi." His Majesty let out a sigh of relief and said loudly, I might as well throw the situation into chaos again. Hope one by one. As long as one understands, they will restrain themselves a little. Those who do not understand naturally do not have the need to stay, or perhaps do not have the qualifications to stay. It is not that I do not allow you to fight, but only those who fight will be the strongest. But there must be a sense of propriety in fighting. If he went beyond this limit, he would be consigned to eternal damnation. Princess Rima bade farewell to His Majesty, and it was only when she returned to her own palace that she suddenly remembered that ever since she had gone, His Majesty had been asking about the Jun family and Jun Moxie throughout the entire assassination process. His Majesty, who had always doted on her the most, had not even asked about the fact that she was the main target of the assassination. Why is this? Could it be that, in his father's heart, this assassination, which was full of suspicions, involved a princess and involved him? Even the major cases involving other members of the imperial family are not as important as the Jun family? Or is His Majesty avoiding something? Or, thinking of His Majesty's deep gaze, Princess Raimu could not help but tremble. Fortunately, I have Uncle Ye's protection and that mysterious expert. While in a daze, Princess Raimu reached into her bosom and took out the 3 small and exquisite throwing knives and played with them in her hands. The throwing knives were only half the size of a palm, and their slightly curved curves were beautiful and natural, as thin as a cicada's wings. Even when the 3 throwing knives were stacked together, they were only a thin layer. Princess Ling Ming was very curious. How could such a small flying dagger display such a terrifying power? It was capable of causing a group of cold-blooded killers to flee without a fight. The throwing knives were silent, and their bodies flashed with a sparkling luster, and under the light, they were extremely dazzling. If one only saw this kind of throwing knife, they would definitely think that it was something used by children from rich families to play with. Who would have thought that it was a deadly weapon of a peerless expert? But as long as this kind of unique throwing knife appears in front of me again, I will immediately recognize it. Princess Raimu thought happily, and her heart was filled with endless fascination. I wonder what kind of person this peerless expert, whom even Uncle Yi admires so much, is? This chapter has been going over and over again since this morning, and has been revised countless times. I don't feel very satisfied. When it comes to this kind of climax, it is perhaps the most difficult time for all writers. Haha. Although my head hurts from thinking about it, I also feel a sense of accomplishment. Could this be pain and happiness at the same time? Regarding the issue of updating, I hope my brothers and sisters can understand again. Chapter 72. Great General Dugawudi returned home with a belly full of depression. He was already completely confused. When he heard the war drums from the barracks outside the city, he immediately rushed back to the city with his personal guards. The first thing he did was to wait for the emperor to summon him to the imperial palace. He had even given the order for his soldiers to prepare for battle. In the event that Jun Zhan Tian were to revolt, only the Dugu family's army could protect the emperor and contend against Jun Zhan Tian's army. However, His Majesty's unusually warm attitude left Dugawudi scratching his head in confusion. Such a serious matter could cause great changes in the country at any time. Even the imperial palace was not an impossibility. But the emperor had only said 4 words, Don't be impatient. Then he told me to go home and find my old man. He didn't even allow me to return to the barracks or take any defensive measures. This is too unimaginable. Dugawudi fainted. Dugawudi returned home with a belly full of depression. He did not even have time to return to his courtyard. The first thing he did was to find his father, Dugu Zonghong. But the result was that Dugawudi, the great general who commanded thousands of troops, was even more embarrassed. Are you a pig? You bastard! You dragged me out of bed just for this trivial matter? You unfilial son! How did I raise such a useless thing? Don't go out and call yourself my son. I can't afford to lose my face. Dugawudi was very angry. His voice was so loud that the entire residence could hear him. Spittle sprayed all over his son's face. He pointed at Dugawudi's forehead, causing him to stagger. Don't you use your pig brain to think? Is your brain filled with dog shit? Rebellion? Bullsh asterisk T. I'm telling you, even if my Dugu family revolts, Junjan Tian will not. Even if His Majesty revolts, Junjan Tian will not rebel. Hurry up and go back to sleep. I can't be bothered with you. You're a complete pig. Stupid pig. Motherf asterisk her. Finally, he kicked Dugawudi out of his room. Dugawudi returned to his bedroom angrily. A muffled groan followed by a voice. Old thing? What did you just say? What the F asterisk CK? Who the F asterisk CK was invincible? If he's a pig, who the hell are you, old thing? Was his brain filled with dog shit? You pig. You're a pig through and through. What followed was a series of muffled groans that were forcefully held back in order to save face. Great General Dugawudi rubbed his buttocks, his face full of resentment. He thought bitterly in his heart, I'll twist this old thing. Serves you right. Confused, he returned to his own courtyard, only to find that it was noisy and brightly lit. Madam and the concubines of the third branch were not asleep yet, and their faces were full of worry. When they saw him return, they immediately surrounded him. After asking, he found out that his daughter ran back, crying in the afternoon. Her tears flowed down, and no one could persuade her. She locked herself in her room and didn't come out until now. It seemed that she had been bullied. The gloomy Dugawudi suddenly became furious. Nothing was going his way. What? Who would dare to bully my precious daughter in the Tianxiang city? See if I don't bring an army to exterminate them. Panting with rage, he led his wives into his daughter's room. He didn't even try to hide it, and coaxed his precious daughter for a long time. Finally, his daughter stopped crying and drank a bowl of bird's nest porridge. Only then was he able to relax. Who was it that bullied my baby? Tell me, and I'll exterminate them. Dugawudi's face was somewhat sinister. He looked at his daughter's swollen eyes and couldn't help but feel heartache. A manic voice in his heart shouted, I'm going to explode. Father, Dugu Xiaoyi had been waiting for her father and said in a spoiled manner, You have to help your daughter. Dugawudi suddenly felt that something was wrong. Could it be that my daughter was... He couldn't help but ask nervously, Who? It's the June family. That stinky brat June Moxie. I'm going to die of anger today. Father, you have to help your daughter. Dugu Xiaoyi pouted and said in an aggrieved manner. Dugu Xiaoyi had been holding in for a whole day. So, she had been waiting for her father to come back and complain. Then, she would ask for her father's permission to bring her brothers to beat up June Moxie and take back the meteoric iron. She knew that her mother wouldn't agree and wouldn't dare to agree. So, she didn't have that idea. Dugawudi let out a long sigh after listening to what had happened. So, it wasn't like what I thought. Now I can rest assured. Then, he wrinkled his brows and suddenly felt as if his head was about to explode. My good girl, I wouldn't be afraid of anyone else. In fact, I would have caught that prince and beat him up to vent your anger. But this June Mo-Xia isn't easy to deal with. Of course it's not easy. Jun Tian doesn't know where his grandson is. How can I find him? Even if I find him, I might not dare to do anything. That old bastard had completely gone mad now. Is father afraid of Senior June? My life is so bitter. I'm so angry. Dugu Xiaoyi cried again. She turned her body and turned her face away. She didn't know why, but whenever she thought of June Moxie's face, she would want to hit him. She would be so angry that she wished she could slap that hateful smile off his face. Sigh, it's not that. Dugawudi was at a loss when he saw his daughter crying again. He hastily explained, "It's that brat, Sai. We don't know whether he's dead or alive. We can't find him. Let's wait until we find him. Father will definitely take revenge for you when we get back. I'll teach that brat a good lesson." He's reckless? What happened to him? Dugu Xiaoi didn't know why, but she suddenly felt a pain in her heart. She immediately turned around and stared at her father with her red eyes. She suddenly felt nervous and afraid. What am I afraid of? I heard that Princess Raimu was attacked by an assassin this afternoon. That guy overestimated his own abilities and rushed to report the news. The princess is fine, but that debauchee became the scapegoat. Dugu Wudi was rejoicing in his daughter's misfortune. He didn't notice that his daughter's face had turned deathly white as she spoke. Her little hands were clenched tightly, but she still continued to talk. He was stabbed in the chest. Then, a silver Xian assassin stomped on his chest a few times. After that, he was taken away. I don't know where he was taken to. In my opinion, that brat's life is in danger. Dugu Xiaoi groaned. She was dumbstruck. Suddenly, he felt a little empty in his heart. He didn't hear a single word that his father said after that. Even his voice seemed to have become incomparably distant and indistinct. Don't worry. If that brat is still alive, I'll definitely catch him and let my darling personally spank his buttocks. Smash it, ha-ha. Dugu Wudi laughed heartily. Only then did he realize that there was something wrong with his daughter's expression. He waved his hand in front of his daughter's face. Xiaoi. Oh. Dugu Xiaoi seemed as if she had just woken up from a dream. She was startled, but her face suddenly calmed down. She slowly lay down on the bed and said in a low voice, "Father, I'm tired. I want to sleep now." "Okay, then have a good sleep. Everything will be fine after you wake up. I'll go drink a little wine to relieve my boredom. Today has been a very depressing day." Dugu Wudi shook his head and walked out. Dugu Wudi, who had an infinitely thick mental state, didn't realize that there was something wrong with his daughter. Dugu Xiaoi pulled the quilt and covered her entire body with it. She didn't move an inch. She heard her mother say a few words, and her aunts said a few words with concern. However, Dugu Xiaoi didn't hear them clearly. Her heart was in a mess. She didn't know what she was thinking. She didn't know why. She just felt like crying. Her nose felt sore, and her heart ached. Her tears silently flowed out, more and more, and the quilt became wet. She didn't even know when her mother and aunts had left. Could it be that he dead? But I haven't. Chapter 73. Jun Zhan Tian's face was ashen and his body was full of murderous intent. He strode out of the general selection stage, mounted his horse, and was about to ride away. There were a few places that he wanted to see turn to ashes with his own eyes. Only then would he be able to comfort his grandson's soul in heaven. Suddenly, there seemed to be a ripple in the darkness. A figure darker than the night appeared like a ghost. Although it was right in front of them, no one could see its true appearance. "Shadow, why are you here? Did His Majesty send you here?" Jun Zhan Tian looked up and asked. "This is a gift from His Majesty." The shadow raised his hand, and a piece of white paper floated into Jun Zhan Tian's hand. The face in the fog seemed to smile, but it appeared even more strange and frightening. The voice instantly turned into an invisible thread and drilled into Jun Zhan Tian's ear. "His Majesty said that your grandson should not have perished yet. He also asked me to bring you 2 words, balance." He emphasized the word balance. His voice was very dry and somewhat reluctant. It seemed that he was not used to saying so many words at once. "Xie is not dead." Jun Zhan Tian was inexplicably ecstatic. He suddenly thought of the mysterious person he had entrusted. Could it be that he had rescued my grandson? He stepped forward and asked eagerly, "Shadow, is my grandson's injury serious?" The shadow turned around and was about to leave. It seemed that he did not want to stay even a moment longer. He seemed to have no interest in a number 1 military man in front of him. But when he heard Jun Zhan Tian's question, he reluctantly said a few more words. "He is not dead. He is seriously injured." After saying that, he turned his head and looked at Jun Wui, who was beside Junjian Tian. He snorted and disappeared with a whoosh. The hope that Junjian Tian had just ignited was instantly extinguished by a ball of cold water. He felt his whole body turn cold. Shadow's final glance at Jun Wui was tantamount to reminding him that with Jun Moxie's injuries, perhaps he wouldn't die, but he wouldn't be any better off than Jun Wui. Junjian Tian's deathly still heart had just become warm when it was doused with icy coldness. Could it be that the only descendant of the Jun family will also become a cripple? As he thought of this, the rage within Grandpa Jun's heart flared up. It was a raging fury. Before this, it seemed that the Meng family and the Li family were always against his grandson. Fuck his grandmother. Regardless of whether or not today's incident had anything to do with you, I'll make an example out of you. Consider yourself unlucky. Junjian Tian cursed in his heart as he mounted his horse. Gritting his teeth, he said, "Army, follow me. Come with me to search his house." The heavens had pity on him. When the shadow had looked at Jun Wui, there was no warning as Grandpa Jun had assumed. In fact, there was another reason. This night was destined to be a night of slaughter. Following Junjian Tian's soaring rage, the entire imperial capital was shrouded in the smell of blood. War horses galloped back and forth within the imperial capital. One after another, the homes of the imperial court's officials were set ablaze. The sounds of weapons clashing could be heard, as well as miserable screams. Before the shadow had even made his move, countless men in black had already appeared from the darkness like ghosts. Their faces were covered as they jumped into the officials' residences. Some of the officials' residences did not even have the time to resist. Their blades fell and blood splattered everywhere. Assistant Minister of Justice Meng Jiu and Li Qiao belonged to the Li family and Meng family's camp. They belonged to the First Prince's faction and were usually at odds with the Jun family. Tonight, these two families bore the brunt of the calamity. While the war drums were still beating intensely, several masked men in black had already jumped into the residences of the two families. Starting from the guards' rooms, the corpses rushed into the main hall and then into the bedrooms. The two pitiful officials did not even have the time to speak before their heads were chopped off. Following that, not a single family member was spared. Following that, flames soared to the heavens. When Imperial Censor Tai Yin heard the sound of the war drums, this old censor who had opposed Junjian Tian for several years because his son had fought alongside Junjian Tian in the war, was filled with righteous indignation. Thinking that the opportunity to overthrow Junjian Tian had arrived, he got out of bed and spent the night drafting a memorial to impeach Junjian Tian. He was only halfway through when suddenly, the doors and windows of the residence were smashed open. Several masked men in black burst in like ghosts. They grabbed the unfinished memorial and looked at it. With a sneer, they curled the memorial into a ball and stuffed it into the poor old man's throat. Then, with a swish of their blades, the memorial was cut into two. The other two families were officials from the Ministry of Rights, Qian Wanguan and Wu Yun, who had defected to the Second Prince's camp. Their residences were a little far away from the city gates. When they heard the Jun family's drums, they immediately felt that something was amiss. Knowing Grandpa Jun's style, they immediately made a wise decision. They immediately packed their belongings and prepared to leave the city overnight to avoid the storm. However, when they reached the city gates, they were surrounded by the Imperial Army. The leading officer shouted for the assassins to be captured. At the same time, he rained down arrows, not giving them any chance to defend themselves. He immediately gave the order to kill. More than 100 members of the Qian family were turned into porcupines at the southern city gates. Even their faces could not be distinguished on the other side. Nearly 60 members of the Wu family were killed at the western city gates. Their corpses were chopped into pieces. Then, they were doused with kerosene and set ablaze. The stench of burnt corpses filled the entire 9 heavens. Beside the corpses of these two families, 2 tall wooden signs were erected, the fate of the assassins. There was also a single imperial censor, Shan Zhongyun, who had woken up in the middle of the night to go to the toilet. However, he was discovered early in the morning. It was unknown how long he had been holding himself in, for these officials, who normally held high positions of power, were now like a flock of lambs surrounded by a pack of wolves. For a moment, it was as if the end of the world had arrived in the capital. Grandpa Jun's rage had thoroughly ignited the entire imperial capital. Tonight's events had far exceeded His Majesty the Emperor's expectations. When he found out about it, he was so enraged that he smashed everything he could see. The Jun family's secret power was fully revealed. It was like a demonic, bloodthirsty massacre. In this restless night, they had used blood and lives to shock the entire upper echelons of the imperial capital. It had also ruthlessly stabbed into many people's hearts, causing many of them to be in a state of panic. Everyone was pondering, faced with such an irresistible power, what should they do? Should they consider the issue of choosing a new side? This was especially true for the three princes. Each of them had summoned all of their aides and advisors for an emergency meeting that very night. At this moment, the Jun family's enormous power had caused the eyes of the three princes to turn red with envy. If only they could grasp such power in their hands. But in the midst of the discussion, the three princes' mansions suddenly caught fire. Following that, countless decapitated heads were thrown into the room, dripping with fresh blood. The three princes were scared out of their wits. The guards of the mansions searched wantonly, but not even a trace of the decapitated heads could be found. They were even chased back like ducks by the patrolling military cavalry. However, there were exceptions among the prominent families in the capital, such as the Li family, the Meng family, and the Song family. They had strong foundations, and after the sudden attack by the black-robed men, the experts of their families quickly reacted and stopped the black-robed men from killing them. However, there were still bursts of thick smoke and raging flames that rose up. In the Li family's secret chamber, several people heard the sounds of killing outside. They could not help but want to rush out. One of them was dressed in white robes. He looked to be in his 30s. His face was cold and proud. Looking at his figure and bearing, he was the white-robed Tian Xian expert who had killed Qin Hu under Tang Wanli's command. The door opened, and the young master of the Li family, Li Yuran, walked in. "Yuran, let me go out. The highest level of these men in black is only Yu Xian's cultivation. It's nothing. Any one of us can go out and stop them. I really don't understand. Your own family has been attacked. Why are you still so slow? Since they want to court death, we'll take care of them." The man in white frowned. He looked angry. He had always been proud and arrogant. Since when did he have to hide in a secret room and not dare to show his face? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.